What's up, you guys? America, and welcome back to my channel. No, you grow up. So today's video is a really special video. It's my first ever guest video. So maybe once a month or so, I'm going to start inviting some friends from other channels on, and maybe even some friends that don't have YouTube channels. I kind of want to use this to showcase some people, like I said, that are just my friends, channels that I like, and just hopefully have some fun conversations with people. I'm going to kind of use these for my own self-indulgence a little bit as well. So they are going to kind of be like very loose interviews, but it's going to help me kind of pick other people's brains, get to know them a little bit better, and ask some things that are going to take a little bit more detail than simple DMs and Instagram will do. So my very first guest ever is my friend Dom from the YouTube channel Toy Domination. I had subscribed to his channel a while ago. I saw him on an episode of Toy Connections, and I was just like, man, this guy's really fun. I really like him. So I subscribed to his channel, started checking out his content, and it was maybe like a month or so later, he subscribed to me and actually reached out to me telling me how much he enjoyed my content. And from there we started talking, and me and him just really clicked. We're kind of into action figures, not for the same exact reason, but we're both definitely big kids, and I'd say that's our biggest thing we have in common. Dom does some really cool stuff on his channel, so the meat and potatoes of his channel revolve around actually playing with his toys. And when I say playing with his toys, I mean he's really playing with his toys. He's come up with this entire universe. He's invented this like RPG style game that he plays with his action figures, kind of similar to a tabletop dice game, but he's playing it in his yard on a massive scale. He did a video a week or so ago, and it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. This guy's level of imagination and creativity are just on a completely different level than most creators I watch. Really can't compare Dom's channel to anyone else's. It is very unique. I feel like he's someone that's really gonna blow up one day, so it's cool that he has time to come and do stuff like this with me now before he gets too big. On top of just having an awesome YouTube channel, he's also a published author. So this is a legit book that I bought off Amazon, and it was published about 10 years ago, and it's the first book he ever wrote. He's really bad at plugging this book, so I'll do it for him right now, because to me this is a huge accomplishment. Like, this is a thick, meaty book, and he says that he has a lot of nitpicks with it now, and again, he wrote it well over 10 years ago. He probably started working on this book 20 years ago. I haven't gotten around to reading it yet, but I'm really excited to. It's called Tungsten Spider, and it's set in this universe that he's creating, not only for these books, but it's his universe for all of his games that he plays as well. And if you're interested in it, I'll put the link below. So on top of all that, he also does a live show every Thursday night, which he was kind enough to invite me on a couple weeks ago. I'll put the link to that episode down there as well. But I had an awesome time on that show. Him and his co-host Joe, very old friends. They're awesome guys. Joe, I'd like to get you on the channel sometime too. He's also very talented. This is his art on the cover of this book, and he's also terrible at promoting himself. So again, I'd like to get him on here one day so we can talk about some of the cool stuff that he does as well. So I had a lot of fun doing this with Dom. There's a lot of things we have in common. There's a lot of cool stuff we can talk about. So the next time he comes on, it'll definitely be a lot more back and forth. But for this one, I really just wanted Dom to do the majority of the talking. Like I said, I wanted to get to know him a little bit better. I wanted you guys to get a vibe for him. And honestly, I just wanted to force him into promoting himself a little bit. Dom, you're awesome. I had a ton of fun doing this. Can't wait to have you on the channel again. But without further ado, let's get into this video. All right, you guys, so welcome to my first ever guest episode. I still don't even know what I'm going to call this yet. I'll figure that out before it happens. But my first guest ever is Dom from the YouTube channel Toy Domination. So Dom, welcome to the channel, man.
Man, I had no idea I was your first guest ever. I am the pressure's even more on. Like, I feel like I should have brought a costume or like a gag or something. Like, there's like, I'm the first one. Like, I gotta knock this out of the park.
Well, I'm surprised, honestly, you're not going to whip out some chicken wings, or you didn't have an E-frame made for that one, which, by the way, okay, that E-frame, I knew exactly what that was the second I started watching that live stream, too. And I'm feeling that you wanted to do that whole series just so you could finally talk about Exo Squad in depth the way you probably wanted to.
So no, actually, I have been dying inside. Like, if I die tomorrow, I'll be like, I never talked about Exo Squad. I could probably do like a whole channel on Exo Squad. Like, I just realized yesterday, randomly think about it, that the ranks that the E-frame pilots are in aren't naval ranks like the actual admirals and captains are. They're lieutenants, not ensigns. So I'm like, wait, so that implies that they're either Army or Marines. Why are they a different branch of service? So I like, it's just like that alone made me want to just keep digging in. And like, I'm a very not technical but tactical geek out when it comes to like military hardware. So I'm like, wait, so if that has this platform, then what could it do in the battle? Like, so I am dying to just go in length of that. But actually, in truth, that one episode, it was very hard for me to choose a show. So Exo Squad was something that Joe was like, dude, you always want to talk about it, just pick that one. So I was like, all right, no brainer, man. I'll do Exo Squad. So
Did you like? Were you very into the series as a kid, or was that something
oh
you kind
yeah.
of discovered later?
Oh man, we're gonna turn this into an episode Exo Squad podcast. I'm in. Buckle up, Cyberjack on. Here we go. Yeah. So I think I said in that stream that I saw a commercial for it on Sunday. My parents were there, and it was very like these hot dog aces are the last hope for humanity. It was very very '90s last action hero. And I was like, the animation looks incredible. And I remember my parents distinctly, as soon as the commercial was done, they looked at me and were like, no. I'm like, what? There is nothing. Why? But then I started catching it at 10 a.m. on Sundays where shows go to die. And then it moved to like 5 or 6 a.m. on the weekdays. And so I started like as a high schooler, late middle school, it's high school, definitely. Waking up that early voluntarily is like mind blowing. So something has to be really good to get my like 14-year-old butt out of bed that early in the morning. But I got up, popped in my VHS and hit record, and like I had tapes of every morning I had that thing documented. So now VHS kids are
yeah, right. Spoiled. Spoiled. I had a ton of those. That's why everybody says, I had the couple from Burger King, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ones.
Yeah,
I had like 20 of them. Like, my parents just put those on, and I mean that kept me entertained all day long. So
100%.
Definitely, I think the retro tablet, I guess, for what kids have now.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. VHS kids.
Yeah,
man. I was dying to talk. I could talk again. Like we definitely have to get out the subject because I will dominate this. When Ken was joking about it on his show, when he was like, "Oh, Don, take it away," I was like, "I will dominate your airspace and never run out of stuff to say, and I will come up with the most weird niche crap."
No, Exo Squad is the one though, because I'd honestly kind of forgot about it until you started talking about it. And it's another one that I've talked about my buddy Josh before, who he was my neighbor, and he kind of introduced me to pretty much like everything that I found in my life. And Exo Squad was the one. As soon as he like showed me that, like that's definitely where my love of what do I want to say, not E-frames, but mech suits came from in general.
Oh yeah,
sure.
Like,
because like I said, I think I talked to you about this like before I actually had my first couple Exo Squad figures. I'd build them out of Lego and stuff like that.
Yes, that's right. Lego mechs.
It just got me really into that kind of thing. So, and the other thing I love,
did he introduce you to the toys or the show first?
See, I can never remember if it's the chicken or the egg for most things. I can't remember if I saw the cartoon first or if he had a couple action figures first, because he would always get a couple action figures and I'd be like, okay, I need to get into this line now. So it might have actually been the figures first.
What was funny was it was my younger brother's friend. I used to babysit for them. And he came over to hang out with my brother one day, and they were young. He's like 5 years younger than me. And he had the packaging still with it, and he slid it out and he took it out, all the little pieces and stuff. I was like, what is this? And the clicking, it was Dillion actually, and like the pilot, everything, all the intricate details is like, what is this toy? And then later I saw the show, and then it never like crossed my mind they were the same thing. There were two separate things in my mind. And then when one day they merged, it was like this like golden parting of the clouds. You know what I mean? It's like, it's the same. So fell in love with both separately.
So let's kind of backtrack then to where it all got started. So how did you go from little Dom playing in his backyard with his toys to big Dom playing in his backyard with his toys?
So I never stopped, right? So everyone has the period they remember. Well, let me ask you, when was the moment you remember where you're like, I can't do this anymore, guys. I can't play Pew and make voices with you anymore. Like, do you remember that moment?
So I feel like I don't remember like the exact moment, but it's that same cliche thing that a lot of collectors have. Once I figured out that other thing that I could play with, I stopped playing with toys.
So I'm hoping to teach my boys now that you can have both, right? Like, so no, but for me, like it became like Toy Galaxy does a good job of collection 1.0, collection 2.0. So I held on to all my 1.0 stuff, and I was still chasing to get stuff I didn't have as a kid. I was never allowed to play with G.I. Joes as a kid because my mom thought they were too violent. So for me, I never stopped chasing G.I. Joes. There were always the toys that got away. I had a big He-Man collection, and I had random Transformers and other random stuff, but most of it was He-Man. So I held on to all that. And then I can still remember distinctly, like in middle school, people would come over and they tease me, like I got a Spawn toy. And so I was like, oh, that's going to be worth money. I'm like, yeah, but it's not, because I'm going to rip this out of the package. And like, I remember being like, I'm just going to take it out and look at it, and I'll be able to put it back in. Like they helped me like slice it with a razor and then slide it out. But in my mind, I was like, I'm never putting this back in there. And they teased me like, oh yeah, you're going to put that back in, right? I'm like, yeah, eventually. So I never stopped. It kind of like the meter went down, but it never went away. So and then I got really weird in high school trying to figure myself out. So I'd like I had no idea what I was doing with myself. So I'd bring a lunchbox with toys to like high school, you know what I mean? So like, and people would make fun of me or they'd take them and like, you know, throw them. I get in fights too. Like I wasn't bullied. I just straight up fight. But like, but you know, people like that's weird, but the other people are all embracing it. And I don't know. So it was this weird trying to figure out what I have now of being like, this is okay. I don't have to be weird about it. Like it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, never stopped, man.
Do you remember the point in your life where you felt like it wasn't weird and it was kind of like, I guess it's never normal,
No.
you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
would never consider what we do normal, but like the
I,
point where you're like,
yeah.
hey, other people are into this just like me still, and they're regular adults too.
Do you want to take a guess when? Do you want to take a guess like ballpark? How recent that's been for me?
I mean, has it been very recent, honestly?
Yeah, yeah, like
Okay.
last year. So not even last
Really?
year. Yeah, yeah. So like actually doing a stream with Zazel on Sergeant Slaughterhouse and Adam on Go Figure. We did adult collecting toy shame was my topic. And so like I was walking into this expecting to find people being like, oh yeah, oh blah blah blah. It's so but oh man, yeah, I hide. It was the opposite. Both those gents were just like, no. And they told me their two stories, which were great about when they like lifted off that shame. And they were both young. Adam was when he found his now wife he was dating. He went to Toys R Us and he was like, I want to get this toy. And she was like, oh, cool. And then Zazel was like a kid on a bus waiting. And he saw a comic shop and he's like, I'm gonna go to that comic shop and get a toy. And they're like, really? And then like all of them unbagged their like nerdism, like I like 40K, like I like DC Comics, like so like they had these like you know release of that without you know taking that in the wrong direction of that shame. And I was like, what really? And like that stream kind of unbuckled a lot for me. And I was like, oh, well, I'm going to be more loose about how I talk about stuff. So, yeah, that's a recent thing. And I could blame the fact that of my occupation, like, well, it's more, you know, I don't know if you want to say like, you know, alpha dominant or whatever like that. But around a lot more boomers. So, you know, that's a less accepted, you know, there's expectations. So I could blame that. But really it was within the last year of just being like talking to guys who are just like, be cool with it or dump those people. I'm like, oh man, you guys are awesome.
So, because like, I'm kind of trying to put things together just based off the videos and stuff like that I watch. You and Joe, I take it, have been friends for a very long time, right?
Since freshman year in high school, and we're both 85, so that's a long time. So
Was that kind of how you guys bonded? Did any
yeah,
of that
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
bring you guys together?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there is, and this might be a dated cliche, but there's a tendency that men tend to bond over a thing, right? So like football, or they bond over a job, or
Yeah.
they bond over a thing, right? So Joe and I didn't really know each other. We're in some circling classes, and like he knew of me, I knew of him, and like it wasn't until we ended in one class where I saw he had a G.I. Joe notebook. I slid over to him, was like, zip. I was like, what you got there? Is that Falcon? And he was like, it is Falcon. I'm like, oh yeah, you got Flint in there. And I started naming G.I. Joes, and he was like, And so we both like, because we're in high school and trying to be cool for school, you know what I
Right.
mean? And so yeah, that like tipped over the edge, like, hey, wait a minute. And then it was funny because he'll tell it too. He came over to my house here. I've got a figure right here. And I had a lunchbox of GI Joes that I'd actually recently gotten. I have no childhood GI Joes, and he went in there and he started bending the legs, right, and twisting and articulating. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa! And then I watched them. I was like, oh, you know what you're doing with that action figure. Unlike my other idiots who come over here and like snap crotches off or like put them in humping poses. I was like, huh. And so he's like, I still have a bunch of these. So like, yeah, that's what sparked that off, and then we definitely have a lot more things that we've shared over the years, but that is definitely our first bond, if you will. Yeah.
So up to that point, did you have anybody else that you kind of like talked about any of this stuff with, or
Yeah.
did you kind of like keep it like close to the chest for most of your life?
No. No. So again, it's not like I was a big jock or anything like that. And the nerdier friends that I had with me, and some of them transitioned to high school, and then some of them transitioned after high school too. But there was a few from middle school, because I moved around a lot as a kid too. My dad was in the military, so I was always uprooting, starting over. But by middle school, I'd settled. So those are the people that a few of them carried over to high school. And yeah, one guy was huge into Transformers, still is. He actually is in Virginia here now, and I'm terrible at trying to link up with him because I'm a dad and whatever. But yeah, like it was the same kind of thing. It's like you talk about one nerdy thing and you're like, what? You have what's the Fortress of Maximus? And like, so you bond over that, and then we bonded over nerd shows. We all had comic books. We all read comic books too.
Okay.
So that was a commonality as well. And some guys like, fell out of it and like just reading comics or just enjoyed the conversation kind of, but didn't really weren't as into it anymore. But yeah, I've still got a few buddies who are as hardcore, not as hardcore as I am. So
as you transition then into your more,
if you keep asking me questions, I will continue giving long-winded answers.
That's what I want. This is like
okay,
I told you.
Like
I wanted to get as much out of you as I could for the first part of the show anyway.
Okay, all right, fair warning.
Kind of what I want to do. I want to be able to introduce my fans, subscribers, whoever the people are that watch my videos, just some other channels. For those of you that don't know, Dom's channel is just very different than, I don't know. I can't really compare it to any other channel, really.
Oh,
like
man.
what you do
That's
is
a huge
very
compliment.
unique.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, whenever you're on a live stream, like I feel like this is the most calm and reserved I've ever seen you before in my life right now. So yeah, you're usually just, all over the place. And like, that's just, I don't know, what I like about you is you do seem to just, I don't know, you are a big kid. You just give off big kid energy.
Yeah.
As somebody that has kids, because I am not somebody that has kids, did that rekindle? I guess it wouldn't even be rekindle for you, but like, how has that like changed the way you see things compared to like kind of seeing them through a kid's eyes again, I guess?
It's awesome. So I when I was young or dating or married, even married before kids, it was these jokes like, oh, he's gonna make awesome play sets one day. Oh, that'll be so great for the kids. I'm like, this is for me. It'll be for me when I have kids too. And people make jokes now like, oh, it's awesome you're sharing that with them. I'm like, let's be perfectly clear. I would be doing this without them, and when they grow up and leave, I will still be doing this stuff. They're sharing this with me right now, right? So, but it is dangerous because we'll go to a store because now they have like the storytelling aspect of it or the imagination expansion of it too. So we'll go to a store and they're like, "Oh, Dad, look at this guy's cool symbols. He could be like a blood orc and fit in here." I'm like, "Ugh." Now I'm gonna spend $25 I wasn't expecting because that's awesome. So yeah, we that's the danger of it too, is that things can just keep expanding out. Like we were just playing this afternoon actually, and there was a Fortnite figure in there, and Plunderlings, Mythic Legions, Motu, what else? Marvel Legends. So like it all kind of fits in the theme. It's all kind of the fantasy ones, but it's all these different toy lines. So that has become more dangerous. Whereas before I was like, no, I only collect these lines. Now it's, well, I collect whatever fits into this genre, this story, right? So but the kid aspect of it that's changed, and this is where I think I don't necessarily want to say butt heads with other collectors, but I have a different perspective from other collecting, is that people say like, oh, they don't make them like they used to anymore, or like, oh, there's no toys in the toy aisle. I'm like, there are. They're just not for you, because like I just went there with my kids and there's Fortnite figures. My boy loves Fortnite figures. There's tons of Jurassic Park. T is all over those things. There's Bakugan, which people will be like, oh, those aren't action figures. I'm like, yeah, but Battle Beast had rub chest and Muscleman. Like that, you know what I mean? Like we had all the gimmicks too, right? Yeah. But there's Page Punchers from McFarlane. And whenever there's a Marvel Legends, right to the right of that are the cheaper 5 points of articulation, the 12-inch ones. Like there are tons of toys for kids. It's just not in the, dare I say, the over plastic that we had in the 80s, where it was one entire aisle of G.I. Joe, one entire, you know what I mean? Like, and maybe that was too much. I don't know. Like maybe this is the healthier balance, but seeing it from my kids' point of view, zip lines are awesome. Spinny gadgets are cool. Things that turn around that make the hero change costumes are awesome. Like my boys just embrace all this stuff. Like, this is so cool. And like, I try to explain, like, it's just a dumb spinny thing, but I'm like, what's wrong with me? You know what I mean? Like, that's an awesome feature. Good job, toy designer. So that has opened up my eyes to toys or kid lens, I guess.
So, because that's the thing for me, is like, I still am a sucker for the gimmicks. Like, I like glow in the dark.
I wanted to ask you about that glow in the dark thing, but go on. Like, that is a big, if anything I know about Eric is that he's 6'3", he loves Teenage Mutant Turtles, and he turns on his lights to let his glow in the dark action figures soothe him to sleep at night. Those are like the 3 things I know about you, or that I'll remember on my deathbed. Eric. So
dying with the glow in the dark wrap in my hand.
Shut off all the lights. I want them to look at me while I pass. Yeah.
For me, it is that nostalgia, and I still get sucked into that stuff. And like with the gimmicks you were talking about, like, I have my web store hanging from a hook on my ceiling on his string. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
in
yeah,
like with you talked about with the like play sets that can like change their suits and stuff like that.
yeah.
Do you remember like they had the Beetlejuice one that went in the coffin and you
Oh
slid
yeah,
it out and slid
yeah,
it back?
yeah.
Like when I first saw that in the commercial, that like blew my mind. I'm like, where did it go? Was that magic? How did that happen?
Well, Adam from Go Figure was talking about the same thing with the Fright feature, Ghostbuster that like twisted his face around or whatever.
Yep.
And those gimmicks don't go away because Meowskulls has a playset like that for Fortnite where you spin it around. He's white Meowskulls, and then I don't know the names. So we don't play Fortnite. My kid just loves the toys that much. He doesn't care about anything of the IP. He just loves those toys, which
Yeah.
speaks to those toys, right? So, anyways, but he loves it, like spins around, and that was the one I was trying to explain. I'm like, Finn, it's you just take two figures. I'm like, you know what? Why am I popping this bubble? Like, let this bubble ride. So
And it's interesting to see too because I got very sucked into Fortnite for a while. Probably was when I moved to where I currently live in Indiana right now. It's kind of when I got out of it. So around 2018, but that is as toyetic of a
oh yeah.
thing that there is. I
Yeah.
mean, every character is just ridiculous, but it all fits together in such a fun way. Like those are figures, especially now that Hasbro has the license. Like, I mean, yeah, they're just I don't know. Those are very fun toys for sure. So I can
They're
definitely see
fun
why kids would get
toys.
sucked in.
Yeah, they're fun toys. My kid, like, he likes all the goofy ones. Like for me, I was like, oh, get the guy with the red suit and the gas mask. Like I can fit that with the G.I. Joe or Marvel Legends. He wants the chicken that's like the split egg thing, and he wants
Right.
like the. I was like, oh, these are the worst. He got Doggo. He got for the 4-inch figures. He got the food pack, and I was like, I can't work a hot dog guy into our game. So what I do is I play separate with him for just like we do a battle royale or we do a mutagen. Like mutagen fell everywhere and now they're all food animals or whatever. So yeah. But you know the two lines again, every time people are like, oh, toys, oh, they're dying. I'm like, hey man, there are two brands. You could say Transformers is probably one of the ones that keeps popping up on the shelves, but I don't really
Never
know
really
who's
goes
buying those.
away.
Yeah, it does. Like Ninja Turtles the same way, but I don't know who's buying those right now. But the two ones that I will always point to and be like, they're winning, and that is a counter to anyone's argument of like, toys are dead. Power Rangers and Pokemon. Those are
Yep.
constantly like kids at 5 years old are still wearing Pokemon crap. And I'm like, yeah, I was too old when Pokemon and Power Rangers came out, but that's how old it was as I was still a kid. And kids are still just flocking to that stuff. Like that's how you win. So I guess G.I. Joe has to be cute and catchable, and then it'll never die.
So that's like a thing that blows my mind because so I was in about fifth grade when the Pokemon hype really started happening here. And sixth grade is when the cards were super hype and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend's nephew is very into the cards right now. So we got him some cards and stuff like that for Christmas. And just being able to open up all those packs with him, like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just crazy that I mean, we are two generations apart
I know.
essentially, and he's
Yeah. It's
still
nuts,
into
right?
the
Yeah.
same things I am. And it's just, I mean, Pokemon is just as hot, if not hotter than it was when I
Absolutely.
was a kid.
Yeah. So like, and they've managed to market brand what their IP better than anybody else. Like, yes, whatever you want to say to, but you can't even pin it down anymore. Is it the game? Is it the cartoon? Is it the video? Like, what is it of there?
Yeah, it's
Everything
just
that it
everything. It's
does.
just a
Yeah.
monster now.
Yeah. It's crazy. So everything it does, like, I watch the cartoons with my kid and like, I like them. It's fine, but he really enjoys them. And then hearing him explain about it, I'm like, man, this is going to be your show when you're an adult later on. They're like, oh, I used to watch this with my dad. Like, that's what I'm trying to establish them now is not my nostalgia. Be like, you like Crimson Guard Commander, you like, Serpentor. Like, I don't care. Like, probably, hopefully, in 10 years, they'll be like, oh yeah, there was this guy, but we called him Bob, and he would always. That's what I'm trying to establish them. You know what I mean? Like, not my nostalgia forced onto them. Be like, you have to play with Sergeant Slaughter like this. It's the stories that we're making, but also their stuff that they enjoy. I want to make sure I'm a part of that too. You know what I mean?
Two things that I want to say off of that. So I want to make sure I get back to the other one. But the first thing, what is the most disappointing thing you've tried to turn your kids onto that you really wanted to
Oh,
like that they just weren't having it at all?
so that's you know what it is. It's by the ages. I tried to introduce gritty realism to them too early, and they
Okay.
were not having any of it, right? Because I like gritty realism, whether it's fantasy or sci-fi. I really love human characters suffering. Like I love it. I love it. And so I tried to introduce that, and they were just like, ugh. But I think I don't know if I'll ever get them there because now we play like not hero like everyone's a superhero. Like they get hurt. What I love about them is that they will accept flaws for their characters. They'll make their own flaws and they'll accept injuries and impose injuries on themselves. They're like, oh no, Dad, I'm out of energy. Like I'm feeling exhausted. I'm like, that's so awesome. Or like Finn will be like, he doesn't see that. Like he'll purposely not see something that's going on. I'm like, gosh, guys, like the fact you understand meta concept is great. But that was one that I failed on. And I got them into the game aspect of it earlier than I thought, so that wasn't it. But that was the main one. Really, is that if I were to play right now, if you were to come over to my house, I would have very few heroes, but the villains would be stronger, and you would constantly with like Shredder versus the Four Turtles, a perfect example. The cartoons, he's an idiot. In the comic books, Shredder is the climax of the series that the turtles barely make it out of there. And usually one of them is crippled, if not, temporarily dead. And Splinter had to jump in. And even then it was an even match. Like the four brothers were just wiped out by Shredder. Like that's what I like. Because the villains are just like, the challenge of the conflict, just like, So for them, they appreciate that. But the grittiness of like war, where I'm like, that character's dead. That they're too young for. So that would be only fail, I guess. I'm really nervous being on your show because I usually, when I go and guest on other people's shows, if you'll notice, I'll talk and then I'll get subconscious. I'll be self-conscious, like I've been talking a while. I'll pivot over, or I'll pause and segue it to somebody else, or I'll shut up and like I'll do this because I'm worried that I'm taking up too much airtime. And then it's the same thing on my channel too. I'll try to make sure, like, don't cut him off. Let Joe talk. Who else has not come in here? He'll circulate, right? So I'm constantly like, get somebody else in. And you keep feeding me these questions, and they're all like long-winded answers, or I feel like they're long-winded answers. So I'm like, stop talking. So every time I'm talking, I'm like, stop talking. You have to stop. You've been talking too long. So
no, there's no such thing here. Like I said, that's what I wanted you to do. Everybody on my channel hears me talk all the time. So I want to bring other people on here to talk because there's a lot of people out there that are interesting. You know what I mean? And that's really what I want to do with this guest show is just, I don't know, just show people the people that I think are interesting, I guess.
Well, I hope they share your same interest, but I think they'll be terribly disappointed and will ask you never to do a guest show again. So,
and honestly, again, like I know most of the people around my channel that listen to Turtle stuff, like my X-Men stuff does not do nearly as well as my Turtle stuff does. And that's okay. You know what I mean? Because I do have my diehard fans that are here for everything. And that's kind of more so what this stuff is for.
So that's why. So there's channels like you, and there's some G.I. Joe channels, and like they will go in within a topic, within a subtopic, within a niche, within a genre, within a, you know what I mean? Like they just keep narrow it down. Like one channel is like, no, I only do G.I. Joe pre 1987 at the 3 3/4 inch scale. I won't even call it 4-inch. I only do that right. And I'm like, that is very specific, but that's good for driving those viewers. Like that is what I want to be able to see, right? I feel that sometimes in my content I suffer from the same thing. Like I just want to talk about, like I want to hold on. I want to talk about Marvel trading cards. You know what I mean? But like no one subscribes to my channel for Marvel trading cards, right? So it's the same thing. But honestly, I like your X-Men stuff. When you did your other stuff unboxing, I was like, I'm in because I enjoy Eric, so I don't really care. Like, oh, I like Marvel Legends too. So for me, the diversity was more appealing because it's not just like, well, I'm not in the mood for Turtles right now. It's like, oh, it's something else, and it's Eric. So like for me, that works for me as a follower of your channel. By the way, sub and like his channel if you haven't already. Sub and like this channel.
That's what I like too. Is when I like discover someone for one reason, and then I'm like, oh, we like this in common too. We like. That's the kind of stuff that I like. The only two Patreons that I'm subscribed to is a retro video game channel, and he's about to start another bi-weekly podcast that's a Simpsons one, and I'm more excited for that than I am his regular video game stuff because, I mean, I just love Simpsons. I mean, about as much as anything. So Artist Shark is a great example of that. He does mostly G.I. Joe classified, G.I. Joe content, and then he'll do like Mortal Kombat stuff. And his Mortal Kombat stuff definitely doesn't do as well, but he loves talking about it. And I just love hearing people talk about the stuff they love. You know what I mean? So I guess everybody kind of watches YouTube for different reasons. But for me, like I'm into the creator usually more than what they're talking about. The subject matter sucks me in, but it's the creator themselves that kind of keep me on the chain, I guess.
Yes, which is why. So Joe only does like a quarter of the show. He only does the streams. I do all the rest of the content, right? Because he's already been committed to like 2 other things, right? So to carve out any more of his time, this is hard enough. But we're best friends for like, forever. So we wanted to do something. So For me, the problem was that we do this stream and we're like early on, we're like, well, we'll do a Turtles episode where we talk all TMNT. Then we'll do a classified episodes. We're just covering by topics. And then I was, it's like, oh, we should pop up random review videos. But I was like, but I also like doing this other stuff over here that's like I'm building things. And ultimately it came down to, I was like, I watch other people do review videos, and those are why I watch them. I don't want to do any review videos because I know, like, I've seen the video about Long Shot. I can't do my own content about like, yeah, go watch the Foo. She did a way better job than I could ever say about this toy, right? So like, I don't want to do review videos. So like, we had to figure out, well, what are we then, right? So, but what it comes down to too is that like we are enjoying what we're talking about. Well, let's lean into the creative side. And that's when I really was like, oh man, let's talk to other artists, let's talk to other creators, let's showcase some stuff, let's do things, let's play with toys. So and I would qualify you as playing because you have a lens of your collection, but you embrace everything about it, from the figures to from the cartoons to the comic books. Like, you're a turtle nut, right? So like, that's more interesting than just being like, I only collect Super 7 and that's it, so yeah. Yeah, that's definitely the feel we're trying to go for here. Is just like, hey, it's storytelling, it's play, it's imagination, it's getting dirty. Like, I literally have a few figures that are sitting here right now that I had outside, and like, yeah, this guy's like crusted in mud, right? And like, someone posted on my video, they're like, my OCD is kicking in. Did you lose anything? Take him outside. I'm like, yeah, sometimes I do. I actually was carrying this truck in my freaking hands, and I piled a bunch of dudes in there, and they all their helmets and all their stuff, and they're all set. I'm like, okay, man. And I was like, I felt like a child. I was like, la la la, just happy skipping along. And I'm wearing these stupid Crocs or loafers or whatever, and I slip in the grass, and it was like a slow motion. I watched the truck like lift up in the air, and all the dudes just came out. They're just like floating in midair, and then they just scatter shotted like paratroopers across the lawn. And I was like,
all their weapons, gear goes everywhere.
And I was like, well, I know what I'm doing for the next hour, and it's not shooting a video. So yeah, I just like combed the grass, and I was like, but at the end of the day, I'm like, if I lose a helmet or a gun, as long as it's not something that's like critical to that character, or because I have a few figures where I'm like, this is what this character is in my mind. Like, I cannot lose the helmet or whatever. As long as that's something like that, I'm like, all right, then this trooper doesn't have a helmet, or I'll swap a gun out or whatever. Like, it's the same thing with playing with my kids. I saw this collector make a joke about like, I was like, oh, sure, of course you can touch my toys in the shelf. Anything in my display, or not display, my collection is, my kids can play with, except for the Mythic Legions. I have to be there when they play with them. Some of those figures are like, they're like $600 now. Like, I bought them for $35 for their $600. So I'm like, guys, I have to be there. But any of them, anything is within grab. Gray Skull, Grabamir, any vintage G.I. Joe, it's all up for grabs to play with, because like, I'm not keeping these things pristine. They're to be played with.
Yeah, and that's definitely how, when Lacey's niece and nephew come over, it's pretty much everything but the NECA stuff and the Super 7 stuff. But the first thing they were drawn to was the Motu Origin stuff. They wanted me to get down Castle Grayskull, and that's, the first thing they were sucked into, and that's pretty much all they played with. And they don't even have action figures, which is like, so that was all kind of new to them. You know what I mean? They pretty much Lego and video games are mostly what they're into and stuff.
Eric, you're doing God's work. You're doing God's work. So wait, the NECA I understand. So I used to bag on NECA for being fragile because I have a lot of scar tissue from my aliens and stuff breaking, and figures that I had in the past I didn't know were NECA. When now I look at them and I flip them over, I'm like, oh, that's how you broke your NECA. But I have retracted that because I've gotten more figures, and short of the little bits, they're better and better. Like the Gargoyles line, like, no complaints. But yes, my NECA aliens, the boys, again, I have to be there. They can play with them, but I'm always like, easy. It's like, don't bend those. But in fact, Tristan bought a NECA Predator, and like, I had a video of him, and the whole time I was like, don't move any of those joints until we soak it. Don't move that. Don't move any of those joints. Like, the whole, so like, and he was well aware. He's like, oh, Dad, the elbow's stiff. I'm like, then we'll just soak it again. Like, he gets it. So.
That's cool to get that early, you know what I mean? Because even as an adult, sometimes I'm like, I don't need the hair dryer. I'll just force this where it needs to go. And luckily, I have pretty good luck. But yeah, it's just, and again, NECA, for the record, has gotten a lot better. So even from the time I've been collecting their figures, I'd say their materials have gotten a lot better. But yeah, they're definitely just that, like, it's like a drier, flakier plastic that I felt like they were made from before.
I don't know, or thinner. I'm not sure what the mixture. I have a question for you though.
Okay.
So we have talked about this in the past with positivity, right? And like
Mhm.
you've even dogged yourself, like, I was too negative. I'm like, I don't think you were negative. When certain people say, like, well, that's not negative, it's just honest feedback. I'm like, when you call someone a douche, that's not honest feedback. Like you're being harsh and negative and you're being biased and you're painting it as constructive. But if you walked into my office and gave me that constructive feedback, I'd look for another job, right? So when someone talks about a toy like that, I'm like, that's not constructive. So when
Yeah.
you broke down some of your toys, you talked about, you're like, I was disappointed about this. I wish it had this. But even still, a lot of the times you come out, and you're like, they're my favorite. Like these turtles, these 4 turtles, I know I overpaid them, blah, 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 but they're my favorite. They're my number one toys.
Yeah.
Like I've got all these complaints about. But even certain figures that you complain about, I didn't really think, I was like, that's fair. Like if Krang can't stand up, that's a big deal for a toy not to be
Yeah.
able to stand up, right? So how do you feel then? Because toys are more and more expensive, right?
Hmm.
And like, and with the brittle factor is a thing, but it's also this wild card sometimes. So you'll buy a figure and you'll crack it open. You do whatever you can, or maybe you just even open the package and a foot falls off, or the hand, like you soaked it and the hand still just, you watch that white plastic stress. You're like, I can never
Yeah.
move that wrist again. How do you feel about that beyond just that initial figure? Like, where does that blame lie? How do you channel that? Where do you direct that at?
So like I said, I've had pretty good luck with things. So like I don't have any broken NECA figures. I don't have
Oh
any
wow.
broken Super 7 figures. I broke a couple accessories, and
What
that's from
dark
my
god
own
did you
meat hands for
sacrifice a
sure.
goat to have that? Like that's insane. There's no,
Yeah, and again, I
no.
mean, I have well over 100 NECA figures behind me too, you know what I mean? So it's not like I have only have a couple in. So like the few issues that I do have, like, so the Super 7 foot soldiers, I think 2 of my 4 that I have open have a frozen elbow. And I mean, even if I heat it
Mm,
up, they have one that I'm just afraid I'm not even going to try to move it, because if it breaks, it's going to drive me
yeah,
insane.
yeah.
And
And that
like,
was a $40 to $50 toy, right?
yeah, $45. I got a couple of
Yeah.
them cheaper because they've been cheaper lately.
Yeah, yeah. I
But
almost
I
got one.
mean,
Yeah.
in the review I just did for my not TMNT top 10, like I put the animated series Wolverine out of my top 10 just because he had that one
I
little
know.
missing paint here. And again, like I think about it all the time. I
Yeah, yeah.
probably think about that more than any other defect in my collection because
First, you see when you walk in your room, like, ah,
yes,
there he
because
is. Yeah.
animated series Wolverine at one time was my all-time favorite, like, character, period, as a kid, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, at the
Yeah, yeah,
height of my
yeah.
X-Men phase, Wolverine was right at the top of that pile, and X-Men animated series was my favorite thing out of everything. But as a topic, I mean, I'm glad you showed the X-Men cards because that was something I had as a
Yeah.
whole. So it bothers me. Like, I mean, again, I don't want to just keep like harping on things, but like
No,
it is
but
just
my
always in the
question
back of
is
my mind.
where does that, so okay, so you have a frozen elbow, you have a plastic surgery gone wrong Wolverine, right? So what do you do now? Do you yell at Hasbro and Super 7? Is it a manufacturer thing? Is it just that sometimes you roll the dice? Like did this happen when we were kids? Like how do you feel about that though? You're like, other than just the moment of disappointment.
Based off the luck I've had, if I have one thing that goes wrong here and there, I chalk it off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because and that's the thing I feel like is a big misconception with QC issues. So if you're like in a Facebook group and you have 10 people post a QC issue, for every 10 people that post, 1,000 people probably have just fine figures. You know what I mean? And
So
there's
I
not
would, yes,
10,000 people
yeah,
being like, "Hey, my figure's great." So
yeah,
it
no,
definitely skews things a
I
bit.
I agree. So it's the louder voice gets heard,
Yeah.
and people say quality control, like, oh, this quality control is crap. I'm like, I buy a very unhealthy amount of toys, right? So like, Joy Toy is like one of my absolute favorite lines. You want me to reveal? I'll reveal a little secret here,
Let's see it.
exclusive to Eric's Patreons. Joy Toy is my favorite toy line, and that is trumps my gigantic G.I. Joe collection, my Mythic Legions, my Motu classics. My like they have sprung board to my favorite toy line, and every time I think about it, I go and pick one up. I'm like, what am I thinking? These are fantastic, but they have such bad limbs that they package the replacement joints inside the package. They give you a little bundle of replacement, like the actual inside the joints, like the bendy parts, the circle with the 2 pegs,
Yeah.
because they know it's going to break. Part of me was like, good on you, company. And then I was like, But also, if you know, right? So I have had pretty good luck. I like every now and then like even a warmed up dude, I'll snap something off. I'm like, ugh. And the only but the proportion that I have bought, right? The number of these that I bought, if I were to pull aside the ones that are broken, it's like 10%, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Except for one time I opened a package and every single one of them broke. An arm snapped off, an elbow snapped off, and a leg. I was like, holy crap, like that was terrible. And those are expensive. That's like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So so you're right. And I was gonna say the same thing. Like of all the Marvel Legends I have, whenever I got one that's got like a wonky knee, I get really mad. I'm like, Hasbro. And then I'm like, yeah, but none of my others have this wonky knee. And I'm pretty sure as a kid, I distinctly remember, and anyone who says like, oh, the company's gone to crap now, I distinctly remember going to the store and you have to look through all the carded ones to be like, what's with Leonardo's eyes? What? He didn't even paint
Right.
his teeth on this one. This guy's got 2 left legs. That stuff happened when we were kids. And you could argue that like, well, they're more expensive now. I'm like, bro, $8 back in the 80s was like, that's like a car payment for me. You know what I mean? That's an exaggeration, obviously, but like that, you know, they were still costly then for kids too. So like, you know, I don't know. I think that you're right. I think it's skewed, and I think we're more inflamed because we're paying the money now, not our
Yeah.
parents. You know what I mean? So
And I think that's part of it. And just like you said, our attention to detail is just far greater than we were with the kids. Because I
that's a
mean,
good point too.
you look at you're not cynical when you're a kid, you know. I mean, maybe some kids are. I definitely wasn't. Like everything was awesome when I was a kid to me. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
ever
yeah,
remember
yeah.
looking at any of my toys unless I just didn't like it, being like, you know, the QC on this toy just sucks. Like I never remember having
So
thoughts like that as a
what
kid.
I'm so oblivious to certain stuff, right? I like Joe was actually the guy who when we went toy shopping at Toys R Us, I would just be like, I got the guy, what are you doing? He's like, no, man. And he would go through and comb through the pegs and be like, this one. I'm like, why? He's like, look at that guy's shoulder. And I look and the guy's shoulder's like cockeyed. I'm like, it's just loose in the pack. He's like, no, it's weird. Like it's a defect. I'm like, huh. And so that's what taught me to do that. But even now as an adult, even now, people, Motu Class is a perfect example. I was on this forum because I was starting to get into it. I was late to the game. I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, I'm going to get these guys. Oh, not for $180. I don't. But I was like, I'm going to get these guys. And they're like, oh, they screwed up again. His shoulders are backwards. I'm like, how can you tell? And they're like, they posted side by side. I'm like, bro, I've been staring at this picture for 30 minutes and I can't tell which way the right way is. Like, how did you know? And I went and looked at my figure. I'm like, I have no idea if this is backwards or not. And honestly, like, unless something is broken, it doesn't. I probably wouldn't have noticed Wolverine's paint job, to be honest. Like, unless it's like, unless the eyes are on the forehead, I probably wouldn't notice. I'm just like, sweet, I got long shot, man. I've been dying to get this mullet. You know, what's his name? What's the guy who puts the stuff together in the 80s to make things
MacGyver.
blow? MacGyver, like, oh, this mullet MacGyver dude, man, with 3 fingers. Like, I will say, like, I'm not totally blind to it. Like, there's some figures I get in my hand, I'm just like, yuck. But that's the toy itself. It's not because of a manufacturing
Yeah.
defect or whatever. So I don't know. I think that it's I think I my needle goes both ways. I will say there are cases like the new Dungeon and Dragons line, the cartoon Dungeon and Dragons line from Hasbro. Every single post I've seen
Yeah.
has been broken. Like there has never been one person who was like, "Oh, I'm happy with this toy."
No, that
So
exactly.
yeah,
And
so and
sometimes
that
there is those issues that
right,
you just
yeah.
can't deny. Exactly. When everybody's figures are broken, that's a
Yes, yeah, yeah,
problem.
yeah.
So
So, but and like the HasLab Sentinel knees, like I'm like, yeah, that is an engineering flaw, not a
yeah.
quality control flaw. Like they engineered that badly to hold the weight. But yeah, man, I think that expectation management, and we do pay money for these things, but these aren't SH Figure Arts. These aren't Hot Toys where I'm paying $200 or Mezco or whatever. I'm not, like Marvel Legends now $25. So I think you're right. Proportionality statistically is something to say about it. Like you probably are going to lose the crapshoot at some point in time when you pre-order stuff blindly. You're probably going to get the one bad batch with a mold, like the guy bumped the table and the mold shifted,
Yep.
and so Longshot has 2 short fingers now. Like that stuff happens, and it sucks that it happens to you. I know you paid money for it, but like I don't know. Sometimes like if it's not a constantly reoccurring thing, like just like okay, like I'll call the company and try and get them replaced. Like that's my best solution is
Yeah.
like be an adult and call the company, man. Like
Exactly.
I don't know. So
And
sorry,
exactly.
I know it's a tangent, but like you and I see kind of eye to eye to this. I know I talked a lot at the end there, but I we talked about this initially about like positivity, but at the same time, we're not blind and like championing or white knighting for a company or like
Yeah.
it's perfect. Like that's not what I'm advocating for either.
Yeah, and that's how I feel because again, I say it like you said already. You already mentioned this. Like I Super 7 figures are my favorite, but I have essentially outside of Hasbro the most problems with those figures, and I'm also those are the figures that I am paying the most money for, so I
Yeah, yeah,
will
yeah,
be the
yeah.
most critical. And again, Hasbro, I'm paying the least amount of money, so I probably will give them the most amount of passes as well. You know what I mean? It is proportionate to where if I'm paying higher quality, I will expect or paying for
That
what is
yeah,
supposed to
that
be
makes
higher
sense.
quality, I will expect higher quality.
And I can't like I've heard more criticism of Super 7 recently, and like I can't speak to that because I'm 3 deep in Super 7, right? And I'm happy with both. Like I love Muckman and Mutagen Man. Like I
Yeah.
absolutely love them. I have no issues. I think you were pointing out like, oh, it's got the hip thing or whatever. I was like, I no clue because that guy I gave him a black wash, and the boys and I just played with him like 5 days ago, whatever. Some poor dude we're playing X-Men game got the wrong mutagen. He turned into Muckman. Like we're fighting with him. And I paused at some point while they were doing something. I was like, somebody said there's something wrong with this toy, the engineering. I was like, I can't figure it out, man. We just went back to playing. So like, again, I'm not downplaying bad companies or are cutting corners. Like that's not what I'm saying at all. Like I obviously hold them accountable, but like one of my absolute favorite toys in the world, which is actually a modern toy, his foot snapped off. And I just wrote the company and they sent me a whole leg. So I was like, thanks. And
Yeah.
like it, it wasn't my favorite toy then. It's my favorite toy now. So which I won't reveal because I'm gonna wait to reveal that on like some, I don't know. No one will care. They're like, that's nice, that's your favorite toy, but I'll really care. So
Circling way back to a thought I was hanging on to from way
okay.
earlier. You brought up something that I was going to say for you. You asked me if I had a bunch of talking points, and I knew organically everything that I wanted to talk about was going to come up eventually. You brought up the new nostalgia, creating new nostalgia. And as
Yeah.
someone that is very nostalgia driven, that is something that I also do feel is really important. Like, yes, I love a lot of the things that I loved as a kid, but like anime and manga is the biggest one for me that I didn't discover
Hmm.
till my mid 20s, you know what I mean? And
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know, when does something go from like being new to you to becoming nostalgia, you know what I mean? Because like
Yeah.
at this point I feel like that is like that's the kind of stuff that I do consider my new nostalgia, is stuff that I picked up later in life. But I mean, One Punch Man, I like that as much as I like X-Men, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't
Yeah.
mean as much to me, but I enjoy it just as much easily.
So nostalgia is more than just like I like a thing now. It's steeped with some sort of emotion or some sort of connection to it, right? So Avatar The Last Airbender is objectively, I'm gonna make an opinion objective here, probably one of the best animations ever made. Like storytelling wise, animation wise, character, like it hits all these boxes, right? But there are less quality shows that I have recently that I've watched with my boys that are nostalgia driven because for God's sakes, like no one I wear this hat whenever I do a stream with them.
So, okay, funny story. We leave the TV on Disney XD for the dogs when we
Yes.
leave, and I finally figured out where that hat came from.
So I watched the show in passing while they were watching it because they just turned on Disney and I was like, that show seems kind of silly. And then I started watching with them. I was like, wait, there's a mystery to this. Like, yeah, Dad, there's this bubble. I was like, can you go back? And I think I want to watch the first one of these episodes. And that became our Simpsons. Like, that was the introduction to that Simpsons type humor with them.
Yep.
These like one-off jokes and silliness, or like the smart remarks, or like, just the randomness. And like, we have all these inside jokes still that we refer to that show. So Gravity Falls, which is what that hat's from, is one of my favorite shows because of the connection I have with my boys. And it's also a good show. Like it ties us in because of the humor, all this other stuff too. It's a good show, but we bonded over that. So that is, I will be nostalgic for Gravity Falls the rest of my life. And I'm hoping they will too. So with new discoveries, and this is why I'm championing the modern, right? It's because you can, if you have blinders that say they don't make it like they used to, or oh, they don't make, they dumb it down, or oh, this is all crap. Here's a hot take. You ready? O-ring is a terrible toy design. The O-ring is a terrible toy design. Everyone's like, oh, bring back O-rings. I'm like, don't bring back O-rings. That is one of the worst design. It's got a freaking rubber band holding a toy together. That's a step away from those Mego dolls. Like, that is insane. Like, we can do so much more with toys. They can kick their own butts now. Like, I love the O-rings, but get out of here, man. Like, so whenever people are like, oh, they don't make them like that anymore, I'm like, no, they're better. I think that it's these blinder biases that come in. It is a little, it's just not being receptive to new things, right? And like, I think that when you're open, you're like, hey, wait, what's this new, what's One Punch Man? What's Gravity Falls? What is this thing? Like, it can create, if you allow yourself, just as equal as a satisfaction when you're a kid. Case in point, I sold almost all of my original He-Man toys because they were weird and they had rubber band legs and they were fading. And I was like, they're stupid and they can only do this. And I was like, because Motu Classics came out. I'm like, well, why don't I buy the figure that I actually is a good figure? Well, then relatively, than these things. So I sold that collection and bought Motu Classics. And right now, as I'm looking at Joy Toy continues to pump out, I'm like, I don't think I want these O-ring G.I. Joes anymore. I think I love these things better. And like, I've established new emotional attachments to them. And my number one toy, as I said, like my number one toy in my collection, if my collection was melting down, I would run there and grab that one figure. He came out like 6 years ago, 5 years ago, or something like that. Like, that's my number one. I still have some of my childhood toys, but it's because of what you associate with that toy or that cartoon or that comic or whatever. Like, so my X-Men are the Jonathan Hickman X-Men, and I've got a lot of X-Men comics from 80s, 90s. You know, I think I've got some Claremonts in there too. But Hickman's X-Men are my X-Men because I'm just like, I fell in love with it, and like every time I see that art, it takes me back to that moment, which was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So yeah, it's a couple things. It's one, the emotions that you put into it and what's surrounding you. And like, a lot of people are like, oh, you don't have to worry about taxes back then. I'm like, you don't have to worry about taxes now. But but like, that's just like, you've got scratch over your shoulder back there, but you probably don't have any attachment to that toy then. You didn't have them then, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you chase them. Like, do you have like a lot of love for that toy now? Probably not, right?
I mean, just as much as I love any figure in my Super 7 collection, you know what I mean? But yeah, it is the one that I just, and I've said this before, like, it's the one I look at and it doesn't take me back in time, you know what I mean? It's a cool figure. I do like it now. And again, it surprised me when I got it too, because that was kind of my mindset. It's like, I don't have any nostalgia for this figure. I'm not going to care. But then I got him. I'm like, okay, he's actually kind of one of the better Super 7 figures. You know what I mean? And
your number one figure, for your Turtles number one figure, was not a vintage figure. It wasn't even a vintage inspired figure. It was a brand new figure. And it was a brand new character, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah, that's brand new, right? That's 100%. So that's like, that was your number one, man.
Talking about exactly.
So like, that's new. That's, yes, it's an old concept maybe, but that's a new comic as of 2021, 2020 or something like that. So you put that as your number one figure in there because you absolutely love the issue, you love the storyline with it, you love the character, and you love the figure. That is your new nostalgia.
Yeah, and like I said, it is just a very powerful memory for me now, because that's what drove me to get back into the comic shops. That's really got me back into. I mean, I was reading collected hardcovers and stuff like that before, but that's what got me buying floppies again and stuff like that, and setting up a pull in a comic shop. And it really did. It was, I mean, it's a great comic and a great story, but I mean, it ramped up what I was doing to like the next level. I feel like it really like, I feel like it was a catalyst for all of this right here. And I mean, it's really weird to think that it was just a comic book, but that's really what it is. It drove. Before that, I was just excited about the old stuff, and that's when I started getting excited about the new stuff. You know what I mean? And with the, so I feel like, I can't remember if we talked about this before or not, but like the fallacy of people just thinking if you like something new, it somehow negates the old, and that's just not the case. Like,
it does.
I can love new things and old things, and it doesn't mean if I like my new, even if I'm more excited about something new, it doesn't mean, because like the Playmates vintage line is a perfect example. Those figures mean more to me than any of the modern stuff, but I don't know if I like them as much as I like Super 7
that's
figures,
fair. That's fair. Yeah. I don't really so listen, I don't want to sound too preachy in this as your guest here show, or like, people are like, this Dom guy, man, like,
floor is yours, man. Floor is yours.
Yeah, I don't really chase nostalgia purchases. Like, again, even before my kids, I was building Motu Classics line, but I really loved the 2000X cartoons. A perfect example that came out in like 2002. When did I come back from Afghanistan? So like 2003, right? So somewhere around there, And like I was like, wait, what is this show? Like I love that show. And that's you know, that's not that old relatively, right? So I bought the Motu Classics line that came out way after that, but I was building a fantasy world out of this stuff. Like I was already head swapping, like, hey, and then Mythic Legions came out. I'm like, goodbye, Motu Classics. You know what I mean? Like these are way better fantasy figures. So I think that the one thing I do chase for nostalgia bias, and I'm a hypocrite because I'm like, if people want to chase their childhood all day long, like that's awesome, man. But for me, I'm like, no, I want to tell stories. I want to make, or I got actually a thing here from a video I was shooting earlier. I want to make a custom army of like, these are Zolorians and like they've got their own lore and they've got swords and crap. Well, they're falling off their stance. So, you know, like, you know, it's steeped in like whatever my own headcanon is, and like, because I'm weird. But the nostalgia chase I do have a problem with right now is the trading cards. Because for me, this is like, these are new. I actually got to have the satisfaction of ripping over the packages
Oh,
again.
really?
Yeah, and I paid like $8 for a pack, and I'll say that buying the old ones again and opening a pack, I was like, well, I've already have this full set, so that wasn't as fun. Then I started buying the new cards, and that's a whole nother tangent. But yeah, there was a high buying those things, ripping them open, seeing the characters, and like, and it's not that is definitely triggered from when I was a kid, but I really liked the fact that they had characters that are new. So like this is Death of X Cyclops, which is my favorite Cyclops, by the way, with that X thing over there too. But like, yeah, just being able to see those, like, oh, I read these comics. Like it's such a kid thing, but that is my nostalgia trip. I chase those. So I'm a hypocrite, like 100%.
But for you, it's more being in love with the cards than the actual cards, because I know what you mean. Like opening, there's something about opening up a pack of trading cards that like nothing, and that's the one reason I cannot get back into trading cards. Like a lot of
Don't
my
do it.
friends,
It's
like,
insane. Yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead.
like they got back into Pokemon cards pretty hard in recent years and stuff like that. And I mean, I just can't, because I just know I will be Lacey will kick me out. Like I will have no money to my name if I got into
If you want to
trading cards.
know if you have an addictive personality or a gambling problem, get back into trading cards. So modern Marvel cards come 4 in a pack. 4 in a
Whoa.
pack. It's insane. And then there's these chase cards, and it's not like, oh, there's 5 holograms to set anymore. It's all these insane variants, from sketches to what's the stupid thing I got? Oh, this is the paradigm card, which is the same thing, but it's got slightly hued in the back, and there's a silver and a gold and a yellow. I'm like, what? These come in 4 in a pack, and that's the base set. And then I found out, I bought a bunch of loose packs. I found out that they weigh them. So if they're loose, people will weigh them and give you the lighter weight ones because those aren't loaded with anything. I'm like, what? So like and I'm luckily I don't care about the whatever the variants are. I really like the base sets because I really love the characters. Like I just showed, like that X-Men or that Cyclops from Death of X is awesome. And this is a Sabretooth. I was actually reading this Weapon X line. So I'm like, oh, I know that Sabretooth. Like, so how the heck? Or yeah, here's Unworthy Thor. Like, I loved Unworthy Thor, where he had the axe and he didn't have the hammer. I was like, what a cool story arc. So how did you get me talking about these again? I don't even remember. How many viewers have you lost right now, do you think? So you know what's funny too, and you can leave this bit in too, is like I'm actually introverted. So I'm actually like a big introvert. Like if I go to the grocery store and I pay for 4 bags of ice and I go back to my car and I have to go back in and talk to someone, I'm like, sorry, no ice today, and I'll just drive off. Like I absolutely don't have the least kind of, like, short of all the people dying, COVID was awesome. Because like I was like in my house and I was like, da da da, like look at all those people stuck in their houses. They can't bother me. This is awesome. And like there's been several times in my life where I've been alone, and like people are like, oh, you poor thing. I'm like, no, I'm good for a while here, guys. Like you can, like, I don't need to see your faces for a while, right? So there's sometimes backstage that I have to like shake it off, you know what I mean? Like especially if I have to have like caffeine beforehand, because it ramps me up, and then I'm extra and I turn it on, I'm an extra, and Joe's like, hey Dom, you're all over the place. I'm like, all right, dial it back down, not that much extroverted, you know what I mean? So I definitely have to like switch it on. Not but talking about a similar subject with people like you, it's easy, because then I'm just like, oh, this is awesome, I can flow about this all day long. But it always kicks in It's like a what's it called, a imposter syndrome, where I just like, oh my god, they're gonna think I'm an idiot. Everything I'm saying out of my mouth, they're gonna be like, you liar, you know what I mean? So it's always that too. So
I'm definitely the same way too, and I mean, nobody that sees me in the day would ever believe that, because like I really do like turn it on when I'm in public,
yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like
Well,
I've always
you
had the
have
kind
a
of
leader or spotlight job, right? Where you
yeah,
have to be
exactly.
like,
So I mean, I manage
yeah,
like 60 kids, and I mean, I
yeah.
run a huge fitness facility and stuff like that, and teach group exercise classes. So I used to personal train. Like I've had to be in these high communication situations, and like it really does like exhaust me. You know what I mean? And that's why when I
Yes.
come home, like I do want to do nothing, and like I mean, people think that's weird, but like that's what I like. I mean, I put all my energy out there, and I like to come here and relax. And
Yeah.
that has been the one nice thing about YouTube. I'm not the kind of person that typically reaches out to people, and so many people have reached
Same.
out to me, and it's just been nice because yeah, like I do want to talk to people, but I mean, there's just something broken in my brain where I just never want to reach out to people first. You know what I mean?
You know what's funny is that I'm bashful. I'm bashful, and like I'll joke. There's two guys that that are my, for lack of a better word, like my digital friends, like my what did you call it last time? Like I'm deregging this. What did you say last time? You're like, oh, it's too hot. I
Oh,
gotta
I'm decommitting to the flannel.
decommitting. I love that. So like, ah man, I love slang or modern slang. Decommitting. That was funny. So anyways, yeah. So Brian and Steven, we're like an Instagram chat. I probably chat with them like every day. It's crazy. I've never met these people in my life, like physically, but I've streamed with them, or I've done like a whatever equivalent to streaming with them, and like I bounce ideas off them. They're my alpha testers for a game. I like constantly, like if I have a question, I'm like, guys, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Like 1, 2, or 3. They're like 2, go with 2. Like keep going. I'm like, thanks, man. Like they're awesome friends that I've never met. And one of the things I bounced off them was like, I gotta get these other things. I got these other people or these other channels, but I'm really shy. They're like, don't be stupid. Like just go ask. But as awesome as they are, that advice is also terrible, because like the counter is always like, well, what's the worst they could do is say no. I'm like, yes. Do you not
Yes.
remember dating? That was the worst. Like, hey, Sarah, would you go out with me? No. Oh, you just like, I was like, I'm gonna go die right now. Like, that is the worst. Like, whoever says that, I'm just like, do you not remember rejection, or you just have never been rejected? So
I mean, there's those people that I mean can get rejected all day long, and all they think about is the one yes. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. They're called psychopaths.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. Because I will think about all those no's until the day I
Oh
die.
yeah,
But
no, there's no better way to evaluate yourself than by someone else just like telling you straight up no, like you're not worth my time. Like,
right.
"Whoa," and yes, of course, my ego is a little more insulated than that, but still, it's like a kick in the gut, man. It's like, oh, I think you're equally as attractive to me. Oh, but you're not. Oh God, you know what I mean? Like crushed.
Getting back to you said we didn't know how you got on X-Men cards, but that was kind of a direction I was hoping this conversation would
Oh,
go.
I don't know
And
if you want this. This is
well, okay,
Pandora's
so
box. Yeah.
I had like kind of a specific thing that I wanted to talk to you about. So the thing I wanted to talk to you about was like childhood headcanon and stuff like that. And like that's
Oh,
what
okay.
the X-Men cards were for me. So
Oh
like
yeah.
again, my buddy Josh has got me into X-Men, got me into the
Yeah.
cards and stuff like that. And he gifted me this book that has all like the Jim
Oh,
Lee
very cool.
cards and stuff in it and stuff like that. So my favorite thing about those cards was all the stats on the back. And I'm pretty
Yes.
sure you did a
Yes.
live stream with when you did it with your boys. You talked to them about that, didn't you? About like the stats and stuff like that,
Yes.
and that's how
And
you could learn how powerful everybody was.
I love, so I have the original. Oh wait, keep going. Did you have something you were gonna say?
No, go ahead and run
Okay.
with it.
I have the original line that I first, the first Marvel Universe wave, not the first Marvel cards, the first Marvel Universe, and it was just a fact block and a bio and baseball stats or whatever. There's actually a really good older podcast now called Laser Time, and they scan each one of the cards and they talk about it, who the artist is, and then they flip around, they talk about the stats in the block in the back. So they did series 1 and series 2, and that is my like, they're very profane and coarse, so it's fun as me as a dad, as an adult, not a dad, to listen to. That is my like, I just want to talk about Marvel Legends cards. I'm gonna put this on while I tinker with something, right? Like that's a background thing that I just love. But I recently have gotten more of the cards like Masterpiece line or whatever else, or weekly. Like they're shockingly, over the last decade, there have been tons of Marvel cards. Like as I'm getting into it, I'm realizing how much of a noob I am. And I'm just like, oh my God, there are so many. But the ones I gravitate to the most are the ones with the stats. And these are the Marvel annuals. This is actually a 2021 22. And you see that's like a crazy Carnage. You probably didn't recognize it as Carnage, right?
No.
But on the back, what's cool is it's got the comic book issue, and then they've got stat blocks. Zip, they've got stat blocks too. So all these are like current versions of characters. Like this is the nanny, which I think is disgusting, but I love Hellions comic. But she's got stat blocks, and for me, it's the quantitation metrics that you can see. Like this is how strong they are. They're a 4, and this is how tough they are. And that speaks to the physicality of the character, and then a little blurb and the art, the body art on the front. With all that packaged together, you understand who that character is. I can measure them. I see their personality through the art. I get a little blurb and I get a comic issue. I'm like, that is the perfect culmination of the card. The only thing I really wish they had on here was like a did you know? And that would absolutely cement these as my favorite comic lines ever, is like, did you know? Like, did you know that Nanny is actually a human trapped in a robot body? I'm like,
Right.
This is perfect. So yes, Laser Time does a great job. They go card by card, and I actually want to do that and pick up where they stopped with Series 3, which is like something disgusting, like 300 cards. But my boys would never survive that. So instead, what we're going to do is I'm just going to take the toys that I have, which is cool because a number of these new cards that I have actually reflect the Marvel Legends toys. So I'm going to take the toys I have, and we're just going to, like, as we watch the cartoon, be like, all right, so they introduced Colossus. Check this guy out. Flip the card around because they understand he's Russian. They understand he turns the metal, and it's a did you know? And here they've seen the show. Like, I love just surrounded, like you said, like here's the full encapsulation canon, you know?
When we were kids, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have all this information. So everything that I learned pretty much was from my buddy Josh. Like that's where I learned everything. And then once I got into the cards, I could actually check the stats and stuff like that myself.
Yes, I know.
And even going back and reading the comics, there's only so much story development you can do in a 22-page comic. You know what I mean? Like you can only do so much with it. If I didn't have the cards, I don't know if I even would have really known that much just based off the few comics that I read and stuff.
Yeah. So what's funny is that it also worked against me because in the series 1, there's Cosmic Spider-Man where he's flying, and I was like, what? Is this a joke? There's black and blue suit Spider-Man, and there's black suit Spider-Man. I was like, wait, I'm confused. And then Wolverine had his brown suit, which I still in my brain think Wolverine brown suit, even though that was like the narrowest costume he's ever had. But in my brain, I'm like, no, he switched to the yellow and blue. I was like, no, dummy. The brown one was the variant. He had that one. Then there was Patch, and there was one other in that series. I'm like, wait, who's Wolverine? So like it did add a little confusion to it. But again, I'm going to paraphrase from Laser Time. It showed you that they're in a shared universe, the Marvel universe, right? They're in a universe, and the did you knows were awesome because they linked Spider-Man to Venom, right? It was like, did you know that Spider-Man's costume is a symbiote? And then later you get the Venom's cards, like, and Venom got the Spider-Man symbiote costume. You're like, oh wait, what? These two? Oh wait, what? Like, yes, that was cool. And I think it encouraged me to buy comics or read comics, but I wasn't, again, like my mom was very protective of my sensibilities. Joke's on her. I've got a million toys. So like I was very limited on what comics I could read. The ones I mostly got were Captain America, Thor, and I think some Spider-Mans. So my exposure to X-Men was just non-existent. So whenever I saw X-Men stuff, I'm like, wait, Cyclops has a brother? You know, like that is awesome to see, like the two cards hand in hand, like, oh, these are brothers. Like that's cool. Their powers can't hurt each other. Yeah, that's why those are more interesting than like a Pokemon card, which does a good job for a game. But the cards themselves then lent to a universe, and they don't do as much of that now.
Well, yeah, because I was surprised. I didn't even know X-Men cards or Marvel Legends, Marvel anything cards were still going. I didn't know that was still a medium, honestly.
It's so neither did I, and I regret that I discovered it. I wish that I had just left like my innocence of like, oh gosh, they just don't make Marvel Legends cards. No, man, they've been pumping those things out in these ridiculous limited runs. I actually got a box. So I was like, oh, well, let me get a Marvel Metal box, and I was like, oh, I paid this much. And it's six packs for this little box and only 6 cards per pack. I'm like, blah. Like it's not a fun game. So what I've started doing was I just go to eBay and I buy individual cards instead of the boxes or chase because they're way, way cheaper then. Yeah. And then I know I'm not getting, because unfortunately I felt this is where you got me talking cards. Unfortunately, and this is going to be disgusting. You're ready to throw up. These are actually the duplicates. Because I bought packs and I was like, oh, let me get a bunch of packs. And like, I didn't know the game I was getting into, man. It's like I tried drugs for the first time. They're like, here's crack. I should have gone to pot, but they gave me crack. So this is what I ended up with, was this disgusting stack of duplicates, right? So I'm like, oh, lesson learned, man. Like, how many Marvel Legends figures do you think I could have bought with this instead of these duplicates now? So now I got to figure out what to do with extra nanny cards. Like, I don't even have the toy to put alongside this when we play with my boys or anything. So.
For the record, I don't even think there is a nanny toy that's ever been
Nor
made
should there
either,
ever be. It's a horrible character. I hate her.
So I can't believe they brought her back, because I didn't even know about Nanny until I read the X Factor run.
So Hellions is an so that was like they were a weird combination. Empath is in it. It's a weird costume. I don't say costume, it's a uniform. Like they're not playing dress up. That is their uniform. They go to fight and kick, kill Magneto with. It's this weird blend. You've probably seen it before. It's like pink with like a orange, and they're all V cut. And it was Emma Frost's league of like misfit bad guys or trying to be good guys, like her knockoff X-Men. So I never was like Hellions, whatever. But the recent Hellions from 2022 is awesome. So all the mutants are together, but Mr. Sinister has like this misfit squad. It's almost like a Suicide Squad of these B-list, C-list characters, and he just like throws them in the and Sinister as a funny villain is awesome. Like, he is hilarious. He's so egotistical and dismissive and just like cold, but like flippant. He's awesome. And he just like chucks these people away. And he's always got these side twists. I'm like, this is so good. So having the Suicide Squad-esque with these B-list characters that have all these internal tensions are being screwed with, and they go to Mars and they go to a Crow. It's so good. But yeah, Nanny's in there. Every time there's a Nanny focused one, I'm like, and not finishing that issue. Next. You know what I mean? Like, I just skip it. It's like when there's a Marge episode in Simpsons. I'm like, yep, I'll get the jokes later. Skip. She's not an interesting character. It's not sexist. They're just terrible characters.
No, anyway. And again, like for X Factor, I feel like that was the most boring, because I think she shows up around like issue 30 or something like that. And I feel like she sticks around for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, very interesting character that they decided to bring back, because that's the one thing with X-Men comics. I am not up to date on the modern stuff at all. And when I say modern, I mean anything past the year 2000, really. Yeah. So I mean, I know that's the stuff that you really seem to be into, is the Hickman stuff, and that's probably where it started with House of X or House of 10 or whatever it is. And then
it's so groundbreakingly good, because I've fallen out of comics several times, mostly in college because of money, right? It's like, do I eat or read this comic book? But I fell out of comics, the G.A.B.A. and Cal comics, because I got so tired of the story repetitions, or like Superman stopping bank robbers, or like I don't know, I just got tired of the dying over and over again. I'm like, I don't care. So I kind of fell out of it, and I got into more things like Powers or Queen and Country, like very, very non-G.A.B.A. and Cal arcs. And it took me a long time to get back into them, and I kind of trickled in, picked up a few runs, dropped out, picked up. And then when I was single in Hawaii and I was living way below my rent, so I get rent money, right, for my job. And so I was living way below that in like a 1-bedroom with me and my dog. So I had like all this extra income. So I'd go to the comic shop, and I was like, it's like red carpet service when I walk in there, right? Like the guy would be like, you can bring your dog in here, and he like lay out a carpet for me. Like, like, oh, Dom, I have this display over here, because I'm a single dude, and I have like stupid. I drove a motorcycle, so I paid $5 for gas, and I was living way above below my rent, and I ate like ramen. So like, yeah, I've got money for comics. So anyway, I go in there. New 52 came out, and I bought every single #1 issues in there to see what I was like. Let me see what DC's about, man. Like, I never really picked these up. I really like New 52. I know that is like a black eye on DC, but I really enjoyed it. And Joe, who's a big DC fan, was just like, blah. But certain issues, like, oh no, I really like what they did there. So we would talk about that. But anyways, yeah, I got into comics then. That was like 2010, and I just started picking up these issues. And I'm like, these stories are really good. They're continuous. They reflect. They're changing. Like, Beast is was a cat now, and like Iceman's a mega mutant. Like, it just kept growing, and that's what I was missing from comics, was a growth, like personal growth, actual drama that creates change. And like, you're not just going back to the monster of the week kind of stuff. And like, from then on, when something comes out that shows that this is just gonna be a flavor of the year, like, oh, it's a big crossover, I'm like, yeah, but who cares? Everything's go back to status quo when it's done. Hickman's X-Men did not do that, and it's kind of maybe getting that way now, but like, they have an island. There's a mutant island that's their own nation, and he established that.
Krakoa is like a living island, and isn't it?
It's so good. They're not in the X Mansion. They're not stuck in New York anymore. They can plant flowers that create portals. They can teleport. There's politics with nations that are anti-mutants or plus mutant, and like they were able to spin off Marauders solely on being Kitty Pride, now Kate Pride team that goes after all the people who are trying to black market mutants, or like they help expedite mutants out. They're like a black ops team that just nomadically goes to hotspot to hotspot. I'm like, this is so cool. You managed to justify multiple stories within your world because you had a need. Like, I have a requirement, so I'm going to build a team. It's the Marauders, it's the Hellions, it's X-Force. I'm like, this is I like it. It is so good, and it kind of he bailed on it, so it kind of has petered out a little bit, and I've kind of been dialing back. But like each team had a function within the new world, and I was like, this is so. And then they introduced it's Araka, a Krakoa, so Araka, which is this whole nother lore, and it's just mind blowingly good. Like it's Apocalypse's where he actually came from. And it like everybody thinks like Apocalypse there. And like they merge those two things together. And I was like, this can't get any better. Like it's just man. So tune in next week when we talk about something other than Dom's comic fantasy. Again, like so I'm a storyteller in my bones. Like I love dungeon mastering D&D. I like write. I've published a book. Like when I play, I always like to generate the story for it. Like when Joe and I would play, he would just come over with figures. He's like, what do I need to bring? I'm like, you need to bring these guys, you need to do this, you need to prepare to do this. I got something all set up, right? So when I see good storytelling, I'm just like, just dive in, man.
Couple things I want to segue into off of what you just said. So your storytelling, the way you play with toys is so story driven, and like it's not just bang bang play, you know what I mean? Like the video I just watched today, like that game was so elaborate with your dice and stuff like that. Like how, like where, like I mean, I know it's like I'm sure inspired from your D&D and stuff like that, but like how did you go from 0 to being able to play that game at the level you're playing it at right now?
Let's rewind. So when Joe and I would play, and this is like as adults, man, like mind you, right? So very D&D kind of focused, but without dice. Like there's characters, there's dialogue, there's a story, there's conflict. I set up the games and like run through it. And I've got 3-ring binders filled with session notes. Like I didn't know D&D back then, but I was basically playing D&D with toys, right? So, and I had no idea that that's what D&D was. Otherwise, I probably would have gotten into D&D and not played with toys. So anyways, we use toys as our medium. Then later on, when I'm not with my best friend, who we can easily just get down the floor, and like I'd like shake the rust off him, like, hey, remember? He's like, oh yeah. I like, how am I going to play with other people? Well, they're probably some people are too self-conscious to go pew pew. Even I'm like self-conscious to go pew pew in front of other pew pew, by the way, not pee pee, in front of other people. So what do? Well, let's build a few mechanics around this. And when you're rolling dice, it also takes away the knowing when you're doing it by yourself, right? So if I set up like a scenario and I'm kind of like, what would this be like? Well, they'd run into the room and well, I guess they would shoot all them. But if you throw in some randomness and it's based on some sort of probability factors, then you're like, oh, well, this could be a crapshoot. I'm kind of in suspense here. And actually, I wrote a chapter, one of my one story I did, or a short story or something I did, where I set it up on a table, and then I knew what the story was going to be, but I kind of wanted to not know the outcomes. So I made a little math game, and I was like, well, they're going to run in here and they have a better shot. And I rolled some dice. I'm like, oh, I guess that character dies in this scene. So that was interesting. But the game as it is now, by the way, thank you for watching the video and inadvertently plugging that. The game as it is now, it's based on several games that I enjoy playing, like Drop Zone Commander and Flames of War, and like very tactical base where you got battalion-sized formations. It's not just a few dudes out there gunning it down. It's not 40K where you're just.
I mean, you have like 100 action figures out there. I feel like.
Yeah. So that was only a I think it was like a 50 point game because I put point scales on it, like you would do. Are you into miniatures? Have you ever done like tabletop game or anything like that?
No, I haven't. Like it's always something that I've admired from far away, but none of my friends love to let me play with them. So.
Yeah, so people always ask me why I didn't do that. I was like, because I spent all my money on toys. I don't have any money for 40K, right? But so every unit has a point cost. You build a point army. So like this is a 1,000-point army. This is a 100-point army, whatever. So I did the same kind of thing. So that video I did was like a 50, 100 points or whatever like that. But really, what I want to do next time is do like a 500-point where I've got tanks upon tanks and aircraft, and all this stuff out there where I could drag on my collection. But it comes at a cost to your knees and back. Like doing that, like it is like I'm like 10 pounds thinner after I do it. I'm just like, it's like a million burpees, right? Because you're like getting down, getting up, getting down, getting up.
Right.
But anyways, so the game itself generated from my love of tactical and like scenario driven and knowing and like the randomness, but it's not totally random. It's based on probability, so you could like take a little bit of risk by swinging over here. So I like that. And the headcanon piece comes from what I've been building for decades and have written and I'm writing about. Which is my own universe or books or whatever you want to call it too. So that game has been developed and is now I think where it's at a good point where I can start pushing out to other people. Like people are asking about it. So I'm like, yeah, I'll start figuring out a way to push it out. But yeah, with my boys though, we'll throw dice, but it ends the did I get you or did you get me argument,
Yeah.
right? And like it's simple. So and this is actually how I like most games. Like D&D is overly complicated. Most games should be, are you a fighter? Then you have a higher probability of swinging a sword and hitting somebody. So
Yeah.
you just get a +5. Like you have a higher probability. And you don't want to be like, if my job in life is to teach and I'm only teaching to 20%, like I have a randomness of 20%, I'm not a good teacher, right? So like if you join to be a skill set, you should have the proficiency to be able to do that skill set. So my sons are fighters or they're mage users. I'm like, it's always a +5, dude. Like, so more normally they're hitting and they're getting their targets. And some people are like, well, that's too easy. I'm like, yeah, but it's not because they have to wade through a bunch of dudes, right? So they're still taking
Yeah.
damage too because they can hit too. So anyways, low crunch. And then just assuming that someone who's, is my job is to swing a sword. I'm probably good at swinging a sword. So yeah, with my boys, it just takes away some of the fighting, but also they really like it. Like Finn was playing today, and he wanted to like cast a spell or something. He was like, "Oh, Dad," he's like searching for the dice. I'm like, "Here, buddy," and he rolled. He's like, "Oh, I missed. Why jump over here?" I'm like, "I love the fact that you just accepted failure." And leapt to you adapted and like leapt to another thing. It wasn't like this frustration of like, oh, I missed and now I'm dead. It was like, oh, well, I've got to adapt. And like I jumped behind cover. I'm like, that was an awesome moment.
It takes like just the randomness of play, and I mean, again, I don't want to say objective, like because that just doesn't sound right with the word play, but like as you said, it takes away that I shot you, no, you didn't get me, and we're in this
Yes.
blah 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 blah, and yeah, and I mean, because again, I guarantee you've probably had some of their friends over there and tried to explain it to them, and I guarantee there's kids that probably just can't grasp that concept of you're not invincible all the time.
No, and well, so my boys will every now and then we'll do a hero game where they are allowed to be just I was like just wade through these guys. Like these are nothing but goons, man, and you're Snake Eyes, like or you're Wolverine. Like just wade through these aim troopers. There's nothing stopping you. And that's really fun to like have that like yes, you know what I mean? And so they were doing this one game where they're fighting a bunch of ninjas, and then I brought out you know who Akuma is from Street Fighter?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have this old Akuma figure. I have no idea who made it or where I got it from. He's just Akuma, and he's the only Street Fighter guy I have. But because it's just like this dude in a tunic with like, he's got baggy pants and he can fit in with fantasy. So I had Akuma come out, and then he was just like Hadoukening and like, checking him in the chest. And like, I even had him doing the Kamehameha or Kamehameha. Like, so they're like, what? Because they haven't seen Dragon Ball. So, like, I was like, oh no, you can't hit him. His hair goes blonde. They're like, what? Like, so he was just messing them up, and they were like, oh, we're out of here. I was like, yeah, man, this is Vegeta. So Vegeta is my favorite Dragon Ball Z guy ever. But yeah, it does take away the invincibility. It ends arguments, but it's also based on, like I said, like a reasonable probability. Like if you run into a room and it's dark and you have no idea what's in there, you're most likely going to trip on something. But if you run into a room and it's well lit and there's not a lot of objects, then don't even bother. Like you just run into the room. Like you don't have to like, we'll see if you trip. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like don't monkey around with that stuff. And if you're a fighter, if you're an elite fighter, then most likely you're going to hit your target and not be hit. So like that's kind of what the game I built in the backyard, I call it the backyard, is it's kind of built around.
Just for my own knowledge, I might edit this out. How long did that video take you to shoot that?
Oh my gosh. So to shoot it was hours, but that was because it was gameplay. Like I actually went and did a solo game in my backyard, and I was just like, okay, well, I'll assume this thing for the defenders, and I actually went back and forth, and I was like, man, this is a lot more fun with another person. But when Joe and I did one, it was an all day freaking affair because it was tons of toys out there. And we also were pausing to constantly take pictures, and I was explaining rules to him. And it was still kind of an alpha. So I was like, oh wait, let me correct that really quick here. Okay, well let's retcon that. So once we got into the groove of it, the next rounds went faster and faster. But yeah, that video was hours of fun playing in the backyard. Like I got to move stuff around at the end, and it was pouring rain, it was freezing, and I was like, my pants were just mucked up, and like my shoes got stuck in the mud at one point in time, and like so that was fun. All my toys were drenched, and I remember coming in like right before dinner, I just dragged the soaking boxes of stuff and left them downstairs and went upstairs and changed and showered, and they sat there for like 2 days. And when I came back down, I was like, oh my gosh, like I gotta go scrub all these toys down because they're covered in mud and leaves. But that was fun, like highly like I left some of the tracks dirty because I'm like, this looks cool. But the editing and putting all that stuff together and like the voiceovers and like
the sound effects and everything too, and coming up with all like the stat sheets and stuff like that. Like,
oh, so that's I wouldn't have done that on the fly. That actually here because I'm still shooting. Like, yeah, that's part of the game. Like these are the cards I've been building. And that's what I've been alpha testing with my buddies. And like a long time ago, when I knew I wanted to do a game, I took this one single pole and I cut them into equal parts. And so these are markers. So like that's covered and that's damaged. And I made them, top side. So you have it's two purposes, right? So that's Overwatch and that's damage because you're gonna be damaged more than you actually will do in action. When you got a tank out there and it takes a hit and it's damaged, you put a little red marker next to it on the ground. So everyone can see like, oh, that's damage. It can only do one thing now, right? Or if it's an Overwatch. But they're not reversible solely. It's that I use this for two. It's really two markers in one. That's why I did it because I didn't want a ton of stuff. So
thing I'll save for last, and we kind of are segueing perfectly into it.
Oh, really? Talking about tanks
and storytelling. So, you are a published author.
Get out of here.
You have a published book.
I can't.
I bought this on Amazon. This is a legit book you can get from Amazon right now. I will put the link into this when I create this.
You're making me blush.
But talk about this book. Like, I feel like you slightly mention it here and there, but and I know we kind of talked about it a little bit. You wrote it so long ago, and I mean, just ballparking the date. So it was published in what, 2013, 10? What was it?
I think that the later edition with the better cover was 2013. That sounds right. Like right before my kid. Where was I? No, Tristan was born, and I remember being in a class when that came out. So let's say 2015. Let's say
okay. So which means you were probably writing it at least 5 years before that, if not earlier.
Oh man, that first book went through like 6 editions or rewrites or hardcore.
So how old were you when you first started writing that book?
Oh man, let's see. When did I go to Afghanistan? 2001. So yeah, 2001 was the first time I was taking it. So 2001. Yeah.
I feel like you're kind of hard on yourself because you were what, 18, 19-year-old kid when you first started writing it?
Yeah, like 20s. Yeah, 20s. Yeah.
I feel like you should be more proud of this than you are. And I feel like you should talk about it more than you do. And I'm trying to make you talk about it right now. And I feel like you never want to talk about this damn book. But
I'm gonna hang up. I'm gonna hang up right now. So okay, all right. Man, these X-Men cards though are really good. All right, so there are. I bag on like Buck Rogers sci-fi or campy sci-fi back in the day, and I think I alluded to it earlier. I don't know how you're merging these videos, but I really like grit. Right? I didn't know what grim dark was back when I was reading books, but if I had discovered The Black Company by Glenn Cook back then, that's what I would have been steering towards, is grim dark or gritty reality. Right? Like I don't want my heroes to be the anti-heroes like the Punisher, like with always a cigar, like that's what you get, kid, like you get your guts spread all over that's not what I always want. I want normal people, but I want very bad situations. I want normal people in bad situations. Like that's always, like, apocalypse movies are pretty good examples of that, except when they're like, oh, he used to be a Navy SEAL. I'm like, well, now you've lost my interest. I want to see a normal person trying to struggle, and that's why I don't like certain movies where it's like Captain Marvel, unfortunately, just came out of the box, and I'm like, you had no struggle to get where you are, like to see people struggle. So a really good book that I read, right before I started writing, which made me go, that's what I want to write, was called Two Sides of the Beach. And it was a World War II book. And it was not the US perspective. It was Canadian, British, and German. And it was all these firsthand accounts of D-Day. So like one of the first things I read from the Germans' point of view was the dudes in the bunker. And I was like, oh man, those animals. But it was these two 18-year-olds in a freaking bunker describing how they were getting pounded by artillery that they couldn't see. And every time they tried to get up to the machine gun, their head was, they got concussed. So they were spinning around and they're throwing up at each other. And then when they actually got up to the gun, they couldn't really see what was going on. I was like, wait, these aren't just a bunch of like goose stepping Nazis that are eating babies. Like, these are just two kids who are getting the crap shelled out of them. The whole book was like that. It just took accounts from tankers to everything through the hedges. And I was like, this is amazing. It like opened my eyes to be like, there's just people on both sides. Yes, there are Nazis that are evil. Yes, please cut that off in the comments right now. Nazis are bad. I'm not in any way subjectifying. You'd be like, well, you know, Hitler had a point. That's not at all what I'm saying. Edit that to make sure that's not a soundbite that gets taken against me, right? But the point is that most people are just conscripted and shoved into an army. You know, maybe they have nationalistic reasons for serving. Like, I've got to protect my fatherland because of whatever reasons, or maybe they're just shoved out there, right? Which you can see in certain modern conflicts right now. Like, there's Russians who are out there right now fighting that have absolutely no heart in the game. Like, they do not want to be there. So to see that perspective of a human that you see as a vilified enemy, I was like, that's amazing to me, right? And so that was one of the books that kind of catalyzed to be like, that's what I want to do. I want to have both sides. So like, I want to be able to show the protagonist and antagonist. So I stopped saying good and bad. I started saying protagonist and antagonist, who started the fight and who's suffering the most during the fight, really is what it comes down to. And that's what I want to show. So I really liked military and I like sci-fi. So that's the setting I chose. And that's really what it is like, you've got an invader and they're coming in and they're not goose stepping Nazis. They're just like, hey man, my country said I got to come here. You're the bad guys today. And this has got to happen. So either, you know, surrender, or if you shoot at me, I'm going to kill you. And I'm really good at my job. And then the other guys are just like, I don't want to be here at all, much less you kill me. And they're just trying to survive. Right. And that's really what it comes down to. And throughout the book, you know, it goes back and forth and there's humans on either side. There's actually a lot of turds on the good guy side, and there's some really good quality people on the antagonist side, like good leaders. And that's what I want to capture, is that this moralism, or this like Cobra versus G.I. Joe, is a very rare instance. Very rarely do you have cases in history where there's a true bad guy. And even then when you have a Hitler or a Mao Zedong or Stalin, even then when you have these bad guys, usually the people underneath them, way down, the guys who are pulling triggers, usually aren't that bought into the party line. So usually just like, I got to protect my family, I got to feed my family, or I just got to save myself. And that sounds shallow, but that generally is like, especially for conscripted army, non-volunteers, that's usually who's out there like fighting and pulling triggers. So like, I wanted to capture that story. Now, the reason why I'm self-conscious about it is because when I go back and read my own work now, I'm an okay storyteller, I'm an okay writer, but I'm better now than what I was. So when I read certain things, I'm like, you shouldn't have used the word that. Oh, that's a 2B. You shouldn't have used that. Like, so there's those things where I'm just like, I could have made that one sentence instead of 2 or 3. Oh, that description's too long. So those things bug the hell out of me. Oh, I just swore in your show. They really bug me. So it's hard for me to push my own work, but instead, what I'm motivated to do now more than ever now is write and prove myself anew, to be like, okay, well, that was good. Let's crack out another one. So this year I've made a goal to be like, okay, this war game that I'm building right here, this is actually the campaign that I'm going to write a book about. And so, yes, it's fun to have a war game. And Stephen and Brian that I mentioned earlier, they're alpha testing virtually through Roll20. So I actually have a virtual setup. And so it's almost like imagine a simulation with other people on the other side, right? So I'm running it and I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to boil that down to a story here. So that's what's going to be the output later on, and YouTube videos.
So you're literally creating your own lore for your game, or they're kind of feeding off each other, kind of.
100%. Yeah. Yep. The toys, being able to play a game and then have a story around it too. It's always been, and that's what's been problem with the divergence of hobbies for me, is like, I love D&D, I love dungeon mastery in D&D because I love the storytelling and making stuff. And I love action figures and I like talking about stuff on YouTube. So when you have a pie that has family and job, you know, you only get so much for your hobbies. So when you split those hobbies up, you dilute them. So now that I can combine writing with my action figures and YouTube, I'm like, oh man, I just converged several things to once. And I honestly, like, that last video that I put out, I'm extremely pleased with, because yes, it took a lot of work, but it's got some storytelling in its bones. It shows the creativity, like my creativity. Like I was nervous to publish it because it wasn't just like a here's a gag or here's a I talked to this person, or it's like, no man, I like this is the creation that I made and now I have to present it, which is another creation. So like I was like nervous to hit publish on that one.
Usually I put YouTube on when I'm like doing stuff. Like most of the videos I
Yeah.
just listen to as
Yeah.
opposed to watch. And once I started listening to this one, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and actually sit down and watch
Oh
this thing.
man,
And
that's a huge
like,
compliment.
first of all, I just wish my brain could just still work the way yours does. I mean, like, I feel like I refer to myself as a kid that never grew up, but I mean, you're just on a whole different level with creativity and stuff like that. And I don't know, man, I could just tell how much you put into that. And I mean, I don't want to say you're taking it seriously, but I mean, I could tell
Oh
like
yeah.
you put serious thought
Yeah,
into
yeah,
this.
yeah,
You know what I
100%. Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah. So not to brag about my own work, because someone will go look at it and be like, you put a lot of you put how many hours into this piece of crap? But like the voiceovering was take after take after take because I kept tripping over. It's like, don't say had. Well, that's no, make that like I like constantly grammatically correcting myself, or like, what's a tighter sentence? Or like, no, what's the emotion of this? Like,
yeah,
I like honestly the voiceovers took the most, and I didn't want to just have an explanation of like, and this time this person does this and they rolled this and I did this. I'm like, no, I want some emotion to this and like some intensity and like and I was constantly worried the whole video, which is doing for me, which is doing well. So I'm actually happy about it. For me, it was the nervousness of putting in that much energy and trying to like convey a thing or an emotion and it falling flat, or people just like, man, you rolled some dice and you played with some toys, or your narration was fine. Like I really was, because you're right. I put a lot into it, and you commit to that much of something, you don't want it to fail. You don't want to ask
yeah,
the girl out and sure say no. You know what I mean? Like I've been working up the nerve for a month to ask this girl out. She sits in front of me in math, and I'm like, oh man, I write her name in my notebook. You don't want to, if it's in your head the whole time, you'll never have to face that rejection. So you're just like, this is a safe space. So like I can
yeah.
pretend like I get yes, right? So same thing with hitting publish on a piece of work. Like I don't have to hear the internet comments or watch the -5 views. You know what I mean? Like because I'll never publish it. So it is a nerve-wracking thing when you're committed to it.
What you do is just not like what anybody else is doing. And
Thank
I
you.
don't know, man. Like, I feel like there are just big things in store for your future. Because again,
I
when
hope
did you
so.
start posting videos? How long have you been doing it for?
Well, so what's funny about that is we started in 2021, and then I got sent to Europe for 2 months. So that was that was unexpected. Like Joe and I just got into like we did our top 20, like the top 20 of 2022 of 2020, and then we started being like, oh, we should do streams, or what are we gonna do? Like, and then I got sent overseas, and I came back 2 months later, and then we had to like get a flow back into it too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say like really February, March, so like April-ish, March-ish was when really we started being able to get into our groove and putting things out there. So, yeah, but it wasn't until this year where I was like, Joe, I want to focus on book and lore, and like, I don't just want to talk about like, oh, here's a Joy Toy figure. It's like, no, man, like this is a dropship trooper, and they're gonna be part of Little Bastards, and Little Bastards, these guys that the Federation invested money. It's like that's like I want to like, wow, you know what I mean? Like that's what I would do. Like that's what I'm passionate about. Like talking toys is fun. Like long shots, cool. But being able to like create your own thing and present it, like, oof, man, maybe I'm
Yeah.
egotistical. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Like maybe all this humility is a facade, and I'm just like, let's like, give me more attention. I don't know, but that's what stimulates me. And I also watch less toy stuff than I do other things on YouTube. I actually watch a ton of like Lindyberg is this British guy who talks details of tanks. Space Stock is sci-fi. Like I have more of those ingest than I do toy stuff,
Yeah.
but those things influence my toys more than toy channels do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I definitely get what you're saying. Because again, I watch a pretty big variety of stuff too. And I do
yeah,
feel like I draw from a lot of different places. And
yeah,
honestly, I mean, trying to watch a little bit less of certain things because I don't want other channels to like rub off on me. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like I do
yes,
want
yes,
to try. I
yes.
mean, there's really no such thing as original thought anymore. You know what I mean? Like essentially everything is just an amalgamation of everything you've heard at this point. But it is. It just. I mean, because I feel like again, I'm not somebody that's trying to like play the algorithm or like try to do something special to stand out. But I want to be unique. You know what I mean? Like I
So
do
that's,
want,
yes, that's the key, is that there's no story that hasn't been told, but your take on the story. Like I love those anthologies where it's like the same story but 5 different directors tell it,
yeah,
right? Or like, yeah, so that proves that you could tell Jack and Jill Went Up the Hill, but depending on how you tell that story, it can be unique and different every time. So like how you present your channel is, your flavor. As long as you don't copy other people's format or take pieces from format and make it your own, that's
yeah,
fine. But like you said that, oh, so one trick that I heard from other people who do reviews is that they don't watch other channels until after they publish their own review. So again,
yeah,
if they're reviewing long shot, they don't look at somebody else's, they do theirs, and then they go see their buddy's channel or whatever like that too, to keep them from being accidentally copying or
yeah.
influence or whatever. So
And then again, on the flip side of that, sometimes I do like to watch things so that way I don't like ignorantly just say the same thing and think it's my own original thought. You know what I mean? Because
that's true too. Like, oh man, they already said that. Well, I should choose this angle instead. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Eric, what I enjoy about your channel is the fact that you are your personality, right? So it's just like I told this to Zazel and Adam and I reference them mostly because they're fresh in my mind. There are other channels, so I'm sorry if my viewers are coming over to watch this too. I would reference you as well, but they just did a stream with me, and it's the personalities and character that I'm drawn to with channels. And like you're an example of that too. Like I'm sure there's 1,000 other Ninja Turtle line channels out there. I don't know them because like, I'm just like, I'm not exposed to them. I'm exposed to your content. And I'm like, oh, I like that creator. And oh, hey, I like this stuff that he's talking about too. Right. So that's for me, that's the angle. And when I
yeah.
want to talk Ninja Turtles, I'm like, hey, go check out this guy, Eric, man. You want to talk Ninja Turtles? Go listen to this guy. So that's something to be said for your channel as well. Is like you have a niche, but I think that you do it well, and that you've got, I don't know if you're Wikipedia smart on it or if you just look up stuff beforehand, but I wouldn't go toe to toe with you on Turtles trivia. You know what I mean? Like unless I go real quick or like look up all the file cards and read a bunch of comics, then I'd be like, all right, Eric, did you know? So I mean, you've got that in the bag, right? So you've got like the expertise angle of it too. But yeah, I like your channel. I think it's cool. I think that's when you do diverge from it, I still enjoy that content. I think it's totally worth subbing. Not that seems like such a backhanded compliment. You know what I mean? Like it's worth subbing. You also said that like my book is like, oh well, it's worth reading. So like, or it's worth watching. Like oh no, what you said was I stopped what I was doing to watch your video. But honestly, I didn't like, that's a true thing. Like a lot of stuff I do on YouTube, if it's someone I know, I'm like, all right, I got to make a comment because I got to show this guy like, hey, I returned the favor. I'm watching your
Yeah.
stuff and I'm paying attention. And I do it when I'm driving. So I'll probably have one comment where I'm just like, and red light crash, and that's what I'll post in your video. I don't do it when I'm driving. I'm just kidding. But that is a compliment to say like I stopped what I was doing to watch your video. Like that is a huge compliment because I do the same thing. Like I run with these things in the background. Unless it's a Dio video, then I'm like, oh man, I've got to stop and like look. So. But yeah, no, I like your channel. What did you say when you saw me? You're like, oh, I like the cut of this guy's jib. You know what I mean? So and and it comes down to like how you package your material too. Is all about it. You could be the best guy in the world, but if you come off as snarky, you're just like these clowns, they don't even know what they're doing. Like he stuttered, he must be a freaking idiot. It's like, whoa, man, like not you are just coming off of this spoiled, petulant person, but like it is refreshing to find people who aren't blindly loyal and aren't white knighting, as the term's called, but are just like, hey man, like I want to have fun. Like, there you go. Like that's the root of it,
And that really is like the thing that I'm just trying to bring the most is fun because I remember the thought I was trying to think that I was trying to come up with earlier.
I knew I'd stimulate that.
Yeah. It was something that you brought up earlier too, and it's that I talk about Ninja Turtle stuff, but it's not like I just do reviews. It's not like I just do stuff.
Yeah.
And I actually do very few reviews because I'm not good at them. You know what I mean? The only reason I do a review really is to show people how excited I am about a specific figure or specific figures. And that's mostly like the reason I do a review. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what the hell a dry brush technique would look like. You know what I mean? Like, I could not tell you when people are like, oh, this is dry brush right here. I don't know what that means. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm definitely not like, I would never consider myself to be a great reviewer. But the thing I just usually like to talk about the most is how much I like stuff about a specific figure. Or on the flip side of that, it's like, hey, you guys, like if you're thinking about spending your money on this, like you might want to think about this first type of thing. You know what I mean? Because I mean, again, I never want to use the word, I'm never going to call myself an influencer. Like that just makes me cringe. But
no,
what I'm saying is influencing people's purchases because they're directly telling me that, you
Yes,
know what I
yes.
mean?
I've seen that a couple comments in your videos like, "Hey, I was debating in this figure. I'm glad you're whether he got it or not, I don't remember, but it was like, hey, your video helped me decide." That is something to be proud of that you influence someone's purchasing decision. Like that
Yeah.
is a great thing that you're whatever you said was articulated enough and convincing enough to make this person make a decision. Like that's a win. You won.
Yeah.
Like good job. So,
I don't really know how we want to wrap this one up, but if you got anything else you want to add or
man,
throw in, or
again, like you want, we can talk about some Marvel trading cards here if you really want to. I mean, I got to.
and
Uh,
that's the thing. So like when I have a guest on, I just want to be able to show you guys off as much as possible. I want my community to get to see other people and just see
yeah,
like the people that I'm interested in and stuff like that. And again, I would love to have you on again and we can have some
yeah.
specific topics to talk to
I
again.
I think we should. So like as so here's the other self-conscious piece of this too is that I don't remember who said this, but like no one's coming to your channel to see you. They want to see the thing you're talking about. I was like, oh, so like for me, when I do my own videos, like it's shut up and get the stuff out there, right? So like get the product in front of them first. Like, but that's not totally true. Like I just said, like I like seeing Eric talk about Ninja
Yeah.
Turtles. If Billy Sue did it, I probably like, I don't really care about Billy Sue. Like, you're bland, you're not interested to me. I have no connection to you. Like, great, I can go look up this figure. But um, so yeah, so that is something to be said. But a topic also helps prevent me from just like holy crap, dude. Like any subject in here, I could just dive into depth in those things too. But um, I do enjoy just like I've never been a guest where it's just been me before. Usually it's a
Yeah.
topic focus, so that's awesome. And we loved having you on our show. And we're gonna do a Saturday morning watch party, and you're gonna be one of the guys we're gonna bring in. We're just gonna pick a cartoon.
Very excited for that.
Yeah, I think
Very
that'd be
excited.
really fun. The challenges that weekends are family time, and my wife
Yep.
started picking up. She's a professional trainer, so she picks up sometimes Saturdays. So like it's boxed even more. So that's like that's a rare occasion. I'm like, hey, I need a Saturday or Sunday. But yeah, Joe and I are just gonna do like a watch party, and we're gonna watch a cartoon, tell everybody else, hey, go watch this cartoon, or just listen to us rant about it. And I think that'd be a lot of fun, man. But yeah, you were definitely one of the people who were like, who would this fit well? Because certain topics fit better with other people. We're like,
Yeah.
Eric, man, no brainer. Like, of course, watch cartoons.
Yeah, and like you said, I know I would say the majority of people that watch YouTube do watch it for the content as opposed. I mean, and again, they pick the people because there's a million people talking about turtles. You know what I mean? You
It's
pick the
gonna
people
marry
you
up.
want to
Yeah,
listen
yeah,
to. Yeah.
yeah.
I never want to say this as an insult, but it's like when people say you're a comedian's comedian, I feel like I am into the YouTuber's YouTuber. You know what I mean? Because like
What's
I
a
just
comedian? I've never heard that before. What does that mean? A comedian's comedian. What does that mean?
so a comedian's comedian is a comedian that might not seem the funniest to the general public, but they're the comedian that all the other comedians think are like the funniest person.
Ah,
So it's
okay.
it's being more
Interesting.
popular with your peers than your
Huh.
actual like the world, I guess.
But
And I might not be
yeah,
correct on
yeah.
that
Like writers are usually like Bob Odenkirk is like this hidden gem that nobody knew about for a long time. The community. Ha, interesting. I've never heard
yeah,
that
and
before.
yeah, and I just like that's just what I feel like I'm into with YouTube. I'm into the YouTuber's YouTuber because again, I just see everything you put into what you do. And like I said, that video I watched today, like I mean, I was doing the dishes and I stopped for a second and I was like, I do. If I ever get to hang out with you in real life, I want to play this damn game so bad. Like I would
So I
love to
can
play that.
I made a Marvel Legends game. I made a 6-inch figure game. I can make a game borrowed from a lot of different mechanics. We can play Ninja Turtles game. Like I hands down be like, oh, I can come up with some stats for Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, and Shredder. Like easily. We could play a game. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Anyone who comes over, we're playing my game. Like I've got a
Yeah.
buddy nearby where I'm like, hey, you gonna come over? He's like, oh yeah, we can barbecue. I'm like, no, you're playing G.I. Joe's in the backyard with you. Dumb. So like whether you know it or not, man, warm those knees up because they are gonna oof.
But I guess, yeah, wraps it up for this one. My first ever guest show. Still don't know what I'm officially going to name it. I'll think of that when I do all my editing and stuff. But Dom, thank you very much for coming on. I had a
Yeah,
lot of
super
fun. Again, I
flattered.
know you probably think you did too much of the talking like you always do, but
100
that's what I
100%.
wanted out of this. Again, I'll have you on again. We'll have some specific topics. We can get a little bit of flow going. But again, I
Yeah.
think you're a very interesting dude, and I just wanted to try to be able to showcase you as much as I possibly could. So just thank you for doing all the talking. I really appreciated it.
Well, so I hope, yeah. So thank you for having me on. Like, it's incredibly flattering. I'd love to come back, and I hope all your viewers share your sentiment that you're enjoying. But at least you and I had fun, right? That's
Yeah,
the end of the
exactly.
day.
And
It's
that's
like,
all that matters to
yeah,
me anyway. I
if
mean,
this never
if
gets
100
published, like,
people watch it,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Like, I mean, I had fun. So
If this never gets published, like the other 2 books I wrote, which I haven't published yet, and never will, then you know what? Well, at least we had fun in it too. So yeah, I 100% want to do this again, and you're come back on our channel. And everybody who's watching this, like, please, like, leave a comment for Eric in here and tell him, like, don't invite Dom back, but like, leave a comment. And the greatest thing you could do for me, actually, I remember what I was gonna say, Eric, is thank you for telling people about my videos. I do put a lot of work in them. And someone, or Ken, was like, "Oh, Dom, you're underrated channel. Like, you're like a hidden gem that people know about." I was like, "Then why don't you tell more people?" So, like, get it out there. So I appreciate very much, because I don't plug my own stuff. That you would plug those things too. So I really
yeah,
appreciate
no
that.
problem. And again, I'll put link to Dom's channel down below, put a link to your book on Amazon. And again, when I do the actual intro for this, I'll plug the crap out of you in the beginning of this too. So yeah, just thanks again for everything, Dom. And
Yeah, man.
yeah, hopefully it's not too long before we get to talk again.
Yeah, bud. All right. Thanks so much, man.
Yep, no problem.
See ya.
Peace.